let's go ahead and start the September 21, 2022 TTSA Board of Directors meeting. And if you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, first on our agenda is public comment. So this is an opportunity for, what's that? Do you roll call? Oh, roll call? You want to do roll call? Thanks. Thanks, Blake. No problem.
Director Tresson?
Here.
Director Wilson?
Here.
Director Smelser?
Yeah.
Director
Wilson.
Cox?
Yes.
And Director Wilkins.
Thank you. I'm here. Yeah. Screw it up there. And welcome. Nice to meet you. Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. All right, keep me on track here, Blake. All right, so next on the agenda is public comment. So this is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board for up to 5 minutes on any items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment?
Director Wilkins, I have previously submitted public comment to you via email, and I have 2 more on your desk that I received yesterday and today. So those are all the written comments that we had.
Yeah, the bulk of these are related to an item on our agenda.
Correct.
Right. I think all of them. Okay.
Is the medical on the agenda?
It is. Yeah.
So wait.
Yeah, so if you'd like to comment on...
Should I wait till...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have an opportunity for that later in the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's no public comment on items not on the agenda, we'll move on to our consent calendar. We have 2 items on consent today: ratification of payment of general fund warrants and the approval of the financial statements. Would anyone like to pull any items from consent? No? Any member of the public like to pull anything from consent? Nope. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent items.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Dale. With that, let's see. We don't have to do roll call. We can do it the old-fashioned way. So those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from the August 17th, 2022 meeting. I'm sure we've all studied them thoroughly. Would anyone like to make a motion on the minutes?
I move to approve.
Move to approve by Dale. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Blake. Is there any public comment on the minutes? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. Next on the agenda is discussion of employee health benefit considerations. And I believe we'll have a presentation from Vicki on this, and then we'll receive that presentation. We'll have an opportunity for board members to ask clarifying questions. Then we'll go to public comment, and we'll bring it back to board deliberation. Great. Vicki?
Thank you. So good morning, President Wilkins and directors. Vicki Lufrano, Human Resources Administrator. In 2019, the board adopted Resolution 12-2019, which approved employee benefit changes among other employee-related items. Since then, several additional resolutions have further modified employee benefits. At the August 17, 2022 Board of Directors meeting, agency health benefits were discussed as they relate to active employees, retirees, and board members. The main discussion consisted of agency cost savings ideas, including moving active employees to the Gold Plan, providing the upfront deductible, and considering a reimbursable coinsurance. Also including moving retirees to the PERS Gold Plan with a reimbursement provided to non-Medicare eligible out-of-state retirees for the difference between Platinum and Gold, and also included moving the Board of Directors to the PERS Gold plan. The Board of Directors requested further discussion to include a variety of options, which will be detailed in a PowerPoint presentation. So we looked at this last month, but first of all, who is covered by our health insurance here at TTSA for 2022, and then of course for 2023, the upcoming plan. We have 50 existing employees, 20 of which are covered by a California version of the insurance and 30 out-of-state insurance. We have 55 retirees, 28 are in California, and 27 are out of state. Several of them are Medicare eligible, some of them are not. And at the time this presentation was created, there were 2 board members that are covered by TTSA health insurance. Now there is 1. So the current health coverage provided to active employees, retirees, and board of directors. For current employees, the agency pays for the Platinum Health Plan. That would be for employee plus eligible dependents. We allow employees to voluntarily move into the Gold plan, and then they may receive 50% of the agency cost savings that is added to their HRA account. Employees are also provided the deductible amount that is equivalent to the health plan that they choose, and that is also added to the employee's HRA plan at the beginning of the calendar year. For retirees, the agency currently covers the cost that is required by CalPERS based on a 1987 resolution, and generally speaking, that amount is 100% of the premium cost, but not in all cases. And for the Board of Directors, the agency covers 100% of the cost of PERS Platinum for the director and the eligible dependents. So if we were to look at 2023 based on the way the employees are enrolled right now in plans, or actually considering all employees in Platinum, all employees in Gold with the split for employees only, because the retirees and the directors are not eligible for that split, and then considering all employees in the Gold plan as well as the retirees and the board members. These are the numbers that we would be looking at as an annual premium for all of those people to be covered. And we have it's 2.279 million for the Platinum plan. Ranges between 2.147 and 2.247 for Gold with the split, and 1.9 to 2 million for the Gold plan with no split. So at the last meeting, the Board of Directors asked us to come back this month with additional information providing certain options for consideration. Those options include, and will be detailed further here in the next slides, but those options include changing from to the Gold plan for 2023, so the upcoming current year, continuing the deductible, and then adding a reimbursable co-insurance, but also continuing the cost split for those that opt into PERS Gold. Option 2 for the 2023 plan would remain status quo, but it would also consider moving into the Gold plan for 2024 with a discontinuation of the cost split and considering other cost-saving measures, as well as considering a classic comp study. Option 3 would just be to make no changes and consider no changes for the future. And option 4 would be, for 2024, consider moving into the Gold plan, but for 2023, consider basically having everything the same, but with a change of a deductible, or rather than a cost split, a defined amount which would be provided to the employee upfront in January into their HRA account. So detailing those further, option 1, as I already indicated, would be to change to the Gold plan for 2023, continue the deductible, add a reimbursable coinsurance, and discontinue that cost share split. So some of the pros and cons for that plan would be that the pro would be that the agency would realize some significant cost savings. Some of the cons, many changes for employees to navigate and consider in a very short time period, as we detailed in the last meeting. Staff might be have a time crunch to communicate these changes, to update these changes, to also have our third-party administrator that administers our open enrollment. They need to make the changes, incorporate them into their software, and then employee morale may be affected. So some of the considerations that we detailed last month, but would like to speak about again. There is a short time period to achieve all necessary changes. So any changes that we may decide to make as of today, those changes would require new contracts with CalPERS, updated employee resolution, and that resolution is the one I spoke about at the beginning of this agenda item that I think it was 12-2019. We would need to update that. CalPERS open enrollment actually began yesterday, and on Monday, and while we can actually choose our open enrollment dates, we do have a deadline in which any kind of changes that are going to be made with CalPERS have to be in by a certain date. So again, while we can choose our own dates, we are still limited in what those dates can be. We would have to have further communication for the retirees. The open enrollment plan would need to be built by that third-party administrator that I was speaking about a minute ago. The HRA provider would need to set up the coinsurance plan and any other changes that we may choose to make. We would need to set up an internal reimbursement system for the retirees if that decision was made to provide a cost difference reimbursement to the out-of-state retirees. We would need to communicate those changes to employees for open enrollment. And employees need time to absorb these changes, to make sure they review the plans, make sure their doctors are on the plans, and decide whether they want to go with the gold plan or if they want to choose to pay to stay in the platinum plan. And again, this is all based on if any changes are made. We also are in a transitional time here at TTSA. We have an interim general manager, we have a new board of director, and employee morale seems to be on an upswing right now, and that may be impacted. And while, and certainly something to be considered is that we would save funds immediately by making these changes, but those benefit changes may affect salaries, and we spoke about a possible class and comp plan for the upcoming time period. So we have option two. Option two, again, would for plan year 2023, everything would remain the same. However, moving into plan year 24, which would occur via discussions in 2023, we would plan on moving to the gold plan, so paying for the gold plan rather than the platinum plan, discontinuing the cost share split for those that opt into the gold plan, consider other cost-saving measures, and consider a class and comp study. And some of the pros and cons. Pros would provide ample time for employees to accept and review and study, be able to make choices that are right for them. Provide ample time to build and communicate all necessary components seamlessly and enact those changes, and likely to have a permanent general manager in place, and a board of directors that has had a few meetings under his belt. Some of the cons, possible that CalPERS may debut a new plan, and we can't look into our crystal ball and decide that, but there may be additional considerations for that 2024 plan. Option 3 would be to make no changes and consider no changes for the future. Pros, obviously, no changes for the employees to navigate or consider. There's no scrambling around for employees or staff to communicate or amend these changes. Employee morale would have no effect one way or another, maybe even a positive effect. And no cost savings are realized, of course, by the agency. And option 4 is sort of a hybrid of some of these other plans we have discussed. So for 2023, the plan, we would move into the gold plan. I'm sorry, we would remain in the platinum plan. The cost share, rather than a 50% split of agency savings, the cost for those that opt into the gold plan, it would be a defined amount instead of that 50% split. The employees would still receive the deductible amount equivalent to the plan that they choose. And all of those funds, the deductible and the cost share amount, would go into the employee's HRA account upfront in January. Rather than currently, we have that going in over time throughout the program. So those are the options that we have considered. Are there any questions at this time?
So, any questions from board members?
Just one. On the option 4, I don't understand if there would be any savings. Is there going to be? Is that
Yes.
what sort of a number?
Yeah, I didn't calculate a number. I'm sorry for that. But yes, there would be cost savings to the agency. So currently, the agency pays for all employees to be in the platinum plan. So this would allow employees that wanted to go into the gold plan to voluntarily move into the gold plan. And by doing so, the agency just naturally saves some money there. However, part of those cost savings would go into an upfront, I guess I would call it a split. It's not exactly a split, but a portion of that cost savings would go to the employee in a defined amount. So it would save the agency some money, but I do apologize, I did not calculate that amount.
I ran the numbers.
Oh, excellent.
David, it's about $77,000 if we went with instead of a 50-50 split of the Platinum Plan Region 1 to Gold Plan Region 1 split, we went with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 for single, two-party, and family.
More or less 77.
Yeah.
Okay, Dale?
President Dan, last month you asked if I had any comments on where we were headed with this, and at the time I was a little bit concerned about the workload that it was going to put on Vicki especially, and Crystal. And I had a chance to, over the last month, to think about it, and it's not because of all the folks that I see out here. I think this is a terrible idea, and I think it comes at a terrible time. And the reason I say this is because Blake, I understand your position, and it's also my position as a director that our job is to save money for our taxpayers. There's no question that the direction we're headed would save money for the taxpayer. However, I feel that the direction we're headed, as it showed on the display there, it erodes morale. And at this time, especially in this economic time, I don't have to elaborate on what it costs all of our employees to come to work with gas, to put groceries on the table, to pay their utilities. We got winter coming on, and who knows what the cost to heat our homes are going to be. And for us to sit back as a board and whack away at their health plan is a terrible idea. The idea is great as far as saving the taxpayer money. But for me, I want to see stability in this organization. We haven't had it in a long time. And a lot of it is because of the actions that have been taken from our past management. And we have to sit back, and we're on the right track here with Richard and Mike taken over the general manager's position. And I think that we're seeing a morale upswing, which to me is very, very important. The amount of money that this agency has spent in morale issues and discontent among the employees, to me, is staggering. Not to mention the legal fees that are incorporated with seeing us through some of these trying times. And I don't want to see any change at all for the near future. And I want to see stability, and I want to see harmony in this organization. And for us to whack away at these health benefits for our employees is the worst thing this board could do. Our most valuable asset in this organization is these people right out here. We do not need, at this stage of the game, to go backwards. And I think that if we continue on the track that we're headed here, we're going to be going backwards. So I, as a director, would recommend that we have no change at all. If anything, we should be doing something to improve morale and harmony in this organization and not erode it.
Okay. Any questions or further comments?
Yeah, some questions may come up, but definitely some comments. One, I just want to thank, I saw the letter from all the staff. I'm glad you guys are paying attention to what we're doing and looking at the board packet and sharing your thoughts, both from staff, the bulk letter, the individual letters, the letters from retirees. I think it's great that, there's a dialogue happening. I think there's some misunderstandings. With all due respect to Director Cox, this is not an attempt to whack benefits. This is an attempt to have the agency prudently manage its monies. I come from TSD. We used to be a PERS. This is before the Platinum and Gold. We were part of the PERS Care 90-10 plan. We looked at it, the costs and the benefits that were provided, and we realized we could save our agency money by moving from the 90-10 to the 80-20 and self-insure or provide some offsets in cash so the premiums plus the district providing the additional benefits got the employees to the exact same place, but the agency saved money. And that's what we're really trying to do. There is no attempt in this plan to have employees or retirees pay additional out-of-pocket money. 100% of your premiums covered, and we're talking about some additional HRA monies to cover the difference between the Platinum and the Gold, so that you're actually in the same place. When we did this at TSD, because we were in the choice and they were going to route us into the Platinum, and we looked at it and we chose to go with the Gold and add some additional HRAs. We talked to the folks at CalPERS, we talked to the folks at Anthem, and they basically said the cost of Platinum is 50% higher than Gold, but only provides 7% greater benefits. So we were able to go to Gold and self-pay for that 7% to get you to the same spot in terms of benefits for much less cost. And it's our job to be prudent stewards of the public's funds. I think you guys all know we're also right now looking at a rate study. We're about to go out to potentially go out to all of our customers and ask them to increase their charges, and it's just important for us to manage our fees. But the goal is not to whack benefits, Dale. I want you to be clear on that. That's not the goal. I agree that that this has come up quickly, that health insurance has a lot of elements to it. It's confusing. I'm not surprised that staff and retirees are concerned about their benefits, and that it's important that we communicate effectively. I am, we're not at a vote now, but I think given the fact that we're already in the open enrollment period, And there is so much confusion about how this all works that it's probably a rush to try and get it done this year. I do believe that with proper communication, you guys will feel comfortable with a plan that we potentially may roll out next year, so that you realize that 100% of your premiums and additional benefits, as we currently have it envisioned, will get you to the same place, and the agency saves money so that we can continue to provide this benefit for employees and retirees into the future. And this is, that's the objective, is sustainability. You don't want to. So anyhow, option 4, if you recall, is the plan to look at moving to gold as the permanent option next year. It changes the cost share benefit. I think the agency had the right intention when we said, hey, let's give employees the option of cost sharing. If they want to move down to the lower cost premium gold plan, we'll split the difference. 50 employees at the agency, 30 of you took that option and went to the gold plan, and we split the cost. When we dug into the numbers, though, 20 out of those 30 folks who moved to the gold plan and got the cost share actually live out of state, and the out of state platinum plan would cost the agency less than what we're actually reimbursing employees for, out of state employees, between the gold plan and the cost share. We're actually costing the agency more money to cost share than it would be if we didn't. And so that's where option 4 came up with, so that I think there's still a strong incentive if we go with option 4, that platinum is there for anybody who wants it, but that if you want to move to gold, the cost share now, I think, actually is a fair split between the benefits for the employee to go there. So I looked at this. So under option 4, a person opting to go to the gold plan, that's an individual, between the deductible reimbursement and the cost share of $1,000, you go to gold and you get contributed at the beginning every year $2,000 into a health savings account. That's $1,500 more than the $500 you get if you were in the platinum plan. So you go to gold and you get $1,500 extra dollars to spend. The deductible, and again, this is a lot of information, and you kind of like, how does this board member know this? I don't know that everybody here knows, but I'm the GM over at TSD also, and we went through this process, so I'm familiar with this. And hopefully, Vicki, if we choose gold, I mean, it'd be best, I wish there was more education that could go on so you guys can make informed decisions. But there's $2,000 of money the district will contribute on your behalf if you're individual and you elect to go to the gold. Under option 4, there'd be $4,000 going contributed at the beginning of the year to your plan if you switch from platinum to gold. And under a family person, you get $5,000. So in my mind, I mean, that's quite a bit more than the other agencies provide. To me, unless you have, extenuating circumstances, I think you're probably going to want to consider opting to the gold plan. Those 30 that already have done that, I think it probably still makes sense. Those that haven't opted in yet, that are still part of the platinum plan, should take a good look at that, because I think I think that in the long run, there's likelihood that you would benefit from it. And again, the agency actually shares in the cost as opposed to paying actually more than we would if you were in platinum. And so, as far as retirees go, we did get a bunch of letters. Again, I think there's confusion. I understand, the concern, but I think there's confusion. Regardless of the option, the agency was going to continue to pay. I'm not going to say 100% because we have a formula that calculates how much of it, but that amount of money actually won't change if we went to gold. Is that true, Vicki?
Can you say that again?
The amount of money we contribute towards retirees' health benefits would not change if we went from platinum to gold. That amount is fixed by that resolution.
Oh, you mean as far as what CalPERS
The actual
requires
dollars.
us to pay?
Right.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
So there's no change in that. In fact, there was one letter we had from a retiree who, for whatever reason, the number of years they worked or so on, we weren't contributing 100% of the platinum plan, that if they went to gold, they would actually no longer have any out-of-pocket costs. And so, I think that there's really no change in the retiree benefit. And those that live out of state, and we did this over at TSD, if we've made a commitment to cover up to 100% of a plan, out-of-state retirees don't have the option of enrolling in the gold, and so we said, fine, we'll cover that incremental amount for platinum. And so, anyhow, some of these details, I think, hopefully we can really delve into. My recommendation is option 4, that we really, try and look strongly at gold, do the education with staff so that you guys are comfortable with the details of it, but that for this year we stick with offering platinum, but adjust those cost share dollars in calendar year 23 to a point where there is a savings, an advantage, I think a strong advantage for staff to go there, and the district also benefits.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah.
I'll come back. I've got a couple questions once we get to deliberation on that. Director Wilson, any questions?
Yeah, this was really interesting. In preparation for the position, I watched the last meeting and I watched this particular section of it twice, and I came away with some things I learned in my previous world. And one of them is this is an extremely emotional situation for everybody. Benefits every year when I had to sit down with my wife and figure out the benefits for the family, it was like, okay, where does this number go? And what I found in that worked really effective was to take examples of each scenario, what you currently have, what the goal would be for perhaps 2024, so that you could say, okay, I've got one dependent, I've got a family, I've got 2. So it would be what you currently have versus what the proposed would be in 2024. And what worked for me was those were black and white numbers. That you could see, okay, is this going to be more out of my pocket? Is it going to be 95% less? Those numbers really are important. And I like the idea of moving to 2004. I agree with Director Cox that it was just too compressed time. I didn't think that it would work. And I think what we owe the employees is to come up with a plan that's timed far enough in advance that they can look at it and really make some rational decisions, because when you come up to this compressed time, the emotions kick in and you don't make the rational decisions. So looking at it, I think that we look at option number 4, but we make sure that we do the examples so that the people can take a look at it and see exactly how it works out for you.
Great, thanks. I have a question, probably for you, Vicki. So every year, it seems like PERS fiddles around with the different healthcare plans. Like a couple of years ago, the Platinum and Gold plan came out, and the cost differential between the two was pretty significant. This year, the cost of the Gold plan has come up significantly, so the cost differential is less. I'm trying to remember when that information becomes available to us and to the employees, because that kind of drives the ability to have effective communication. And can you help me with that?
Yes. Generally speaking, it is after the beginning of the new fiscal year. So generally in July or August is when we will see those new rate increases or new rates, period. And we will also see any kind of plan design changes. Generally speaking, I've noticed that CalPERS will announce these things ahead of time. They'll give you proposed rates, they'll give you proposed changes, but they don't actually give you final rates and changes until after the new fiscal year begins.
Okay, thanks. And the reason I ask is, I've been in the public sector for quite a while, and it seems like every year there's things are changing, and agencies are trying to figure out how to provide good, solid benefits for their employees at the most cost-effective price, and it's this continually moving target. Oftentimes, with not a lot of time to kind of go through the analysis and have the communication that you'd like to have, because with option 4, I think there's some merit to taking a look at that, but I'm not sure how meaningful it is to do a bunch of analysis on the current situation when it's going to change for next year, right? And do we, if we were to pursue option 4 or some variation on it, what that might look like is that we would, I think what that means is that we would continue with offering the Platinum Plan. We would continue offering maybe a revised incentive for employees to move to the Gold Plan if they choose to, or they can stick to the Platinum Plan, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then we would, once the new healthcare offerings for next year come out, do an analysis at that time in communication with the employees on what makes the most sense for the combination of the two of us. So anyway, are there other questions for Vicki before we go to public comment?
I got
or other comments?
I got a comment. Blake, I agree. Whacking away might not have been the correct term. So
It's not. It really isn't. I just want to
and
be
I
clear.
appreciate you calling.
That is not my intention. I don't think it's the board's intention.
But what I'd like to say is that these people would not be sitting in front of us if what we're discussing did not erode, not whack away, but erode at their quality of life. And what I want to say is that my intention would be, let's leave things the way it is. You know, when you sit back and you try to project 6-7 months from now what's going to be in the healthcare arena, that is a very serious moving target. And I can sympathize with our employees and retirees and people that have taken the time to sit before us. And option 4 is the way I see it, as long as it does not erode away at what these employees have had in the past. I will move off of option 3, but only if we're guaranteed that they do not have an erosion of the health care benefits that they have now.
Well, to be clear, option 4, in effect, reduces the cost share amount. It still provides, at the very base amount, it says everybody can still sign up for Platinum. And so we're not eroding that. For those that elect to Gold, it is reducing the amount of money the agency would be contributing to your HRA, but I believe it's, the intent that we originally had, which was cost share. And so it is a reduction. I think currently a family that opts into the cost share program and elects with Gold receives, in addition to $2,000 of HRA funds put in for their deductible and costs, there's an additional cost share of close to $6,000. So they're receiving $8,000 contributed to them. And to me, the cost share, we just got off. we didn't really look at it carefully enough, and there is some savings to the agency in the cost share, but it really wasn't achieving the intended result. And so, yes, now that person who was getting $8,000, that family, employee with a family, would be receiving $5,000. I think it's still, so, it depends on how you look at it and how the employees do. That $3,000 less that a family would be receiving towards their HRA contribution may be so much that they're like, I'm going back to platinum, I don't want the $5,000, but I think if you actually pencil it, it really is dependent on a case-by-case example of, your family's medical conditions and all that. I believe that that's still a very generous offer that achieves the objective we originally set of the cost share.
Thanks.
Yeah, my understanding when we started this entire conversation was that there would be we were looking to save money, but there would be no loss to employees or retirees, everything, and that was the goal. And that's what I would vote for. The question I have for Vicki is, in CalPERS, you're talking about a moving target. If we did nothing, is it still potential CalPERS changes the game and employees and retirees lose benefits? Is that, or are we solid?
I guess I would say there is always the potential for CalPERS to change the plans and the plan designs, and there is always the potential for them to increase. I would think, generally speaking, they would never decrease the rates, but always a chance that they would increase the rates. So I guess that would really lend to say that there is always
that possibility.
Of course.
Okay.
So I think in options 1, 2, and 4, we're talking about, well, I'd say 2 and 4, where we talk about moving to gold as the, a mandatory contract. Even if we move to gold, folks could move up to platinum, but they would have to contribute that additional amount to go up there. It's not set in stone. It's just trying to, again, set expectations that it depends on the cost differences. We have to do that analysis. We jump on it earlier. We hopefully do the education so that if the board elected to go there, there'd be an understanding between us and staff of those benefits and concerns folks have on deductible, co-insurance, provider networks. Those questions would all be answered, and there'd be a comfort level that right now I know that there's a lot of unknowns there in terms of understanding the deductible, the co-insurance, provider networks. Those are the big ones. There's probably other little things also, but that's why I'm willing to, even though I think it's the right move in the long run, depending on how the numbers come out, it could be CalPERS could completely change the plans, and we could be looking at they may get rid of gold and platinum altogether. It is a moving target, but I think it's prudent for the agency on an annual basis when CalPERS lays out their plans that we look at them and make an informed decision. This year I think we talked about it. Going back, and I think someone wrote it in their letter. This is something that's been discussed for a couple of years now, so it shouldn't be a total surprise. But it has been kind of late, and I think it's important for there to be adequate. Although it's going to be compressed, and I'm looking at Vicki, the burden will be on you to educate both staff and retirees of any proposed changes, so that hopefully they understand. Again, the objective of not, whacking away at those benefits.
Eroding. I apologize. Eroding.
I have another question. I'm not sure if it's for Vicki or for Crystal. So I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, when the platinum and gold plan came out. It was kind of a similar thing. It's like, oh, things have changed. There was realization on the agency side that this platinum plan was pretty expensive and the gold plan was quite a lot less expensive. and we took a fairly quick action to create this 50-50 cost share incentive because we didn't really have time as an agency to go through and look at the individual scenarios for individual employees. It was just an attempt to provide an incentive to maybe put a little more money in the employee's pocket, save a little money for the agency, and allow people to make their own decision as to whether they want to stick with platinum or gold. What I'm confused on is how that, I'm still not fully understanding how that became the agency paying more for certain employees because there's this in-state, out-of-state thing. Because I thought the intent was always whatever we would, let's say, I'll use Richard as an example. So if we were going to pay $4,000 a year for Richard in the gold plan, but a month for Richard in the gold plan, but it was going to be $5,000 in the platinum plan. That $1,000 difference, he'd get $500 of it. The agency would get $500 of it. So I'm not understanding how that simple concept became the agency paying more for out-of-state employees to go to the gold plan than would have been the case if they'd stayed with the platinum plan. And can anyone explain that?
Yes.
Okay.
You good? So initially, when the gold plan came out, it was called PERS Select. So at the time, we had PERS Care, PERS Classic, and PERS Select, 3 different plans. And generally speaking, the Select plan, I'm going to go ahead and call it gold and platinum just so we don't confuse the issue. So gold at the time was significantly less than the platinum cost. And at the time, and this is still the case now, employees can only enroll into the gold plan excuse me, if they have a California address or if they use the agency's zip code. And at the time when we made this decision to do the cost share, we only opened it up to agency employees that lived in California. We did not choose to use the option of allowing the use of the agency's zip code. Therefore, it was only opened up to those employees that lived in California. Generally speaking, the cost of platinum for California residents versus out-of-state residents, it's the exact same plan, but it's a significant cost difference for those that live in California. So there was a huge cost savings for employees that opted to go into the gold plan, and the employees also got a very significant amount with that cost share into their HRA plan.
That's the California employees.
California employees only, the very first year
California
that we did
residents.
it. Yeah, so this
Right.
is the second year that we're doing it. So this second year, we decided to open it up to all employees so that all employees could partake in that option to go into the gold plan if they chose to do so. But you couldn't, we felt at least, you couldn't truly compare the cost difference between employees out of state versus the out of state platinum fee versus the in-state platinum fee. Again, they're very significantly different, but by allowing employees to utilize the agency's zip code in order to qualify to be eligible for the gold plan, we felt it was most fair to just compare the platinum, the cost of California platinum versus California gold, because there is no out-of-state gold. So that was the concept, that's how it came to be, that's how it worked out that way. So I believe currently this year, 2022, I'm positive of this, the agency is still saving money with the employees that are enrolled in the gold plan that live out of state. There is still a cost savings to the agency.
Oh.
Moving into 2023, however, that would not necessarily be the case for those employees that live out of state. There would no longer be a true cost savings to the agency. By providing that cost split, it would actually end up costing the agency a little bit more. It's not a significant amount, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. I just know that it was not a significant difference, But nonetheless, it does cost the agency a little bit more in 2023 if we kept the plan exactly the same as we have it now. For those that receive that cost split, it would cost the agency a little bit more
Okay.
than just having employees enroll in Platinum out of state.
So I understand it a little bit better. I still don't totally understand it.
I don't even.
So look, gold costs this much, platinum out of
I
state
get
costs
that.
this much. We said, if you go to gold, we're going to split the difference in the cost between the agency and we'll give half to the employee. The problem is that 20 out of the 30 employees that did this actually don't have to pay platinum out of state. Their platinum, or the platinum out of state cost actually is less than that halfway point, but we're still reimbursing them as if they had to pay this amount. And so in fact, they'd pay this, but we're reimbursing them half that difference, which is greater than that amount. That hand gestures help a little bit?
Just be a little
Don't let him get to you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we go to public comment?
Okay. Are we going to have a comment period after public comment?
Yes.
Closing comments, okay.
Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open this up to public comment. Richard, if folks want to comment, do they need to go to the podium in order to get captured on the live stream?
Some of the room is already kind of cut off from video, but audio will be captured. So if they go to the podium, they'll be on video.
Okay.
But if they're in the to your far right, they're kind of already cut off, so they would not be on video. So.
Okay, so what I'll ask is anyone who wants to provide a comment to the board, if you could go to the podium and provide that comment, just to make sure we capture the video and audio properly. Sir.
Let's see. It'll be easy, sir.
And if folks could give us your name and affiliation with the TTSA, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Del Williams. I was an employee here at TTSA for 13 years before I retired. I've worked in the municipal agencies for most of my life in other areas. Anyway, we're retired and living in Arizona. You may know me as the hantavirus kid, right? Because I was the one who got it here at TTSA in '95. I'm not sure what the employees' input has been regarding this medical benefit situation. I just want to remind everyone here that years ago, health benefits were negotiated in lieu of salary by the employees. And I want you all to remember sacrifices in the past have been made for these medical benefits. In the way of salary increases that were negotiated. I happen to know those negotiations because I was president of the Employees Association at that time. A little out of breath because I had 40 days in the hospital with COVID, so it took a little toll on me. I don't want this history to be lost as you are moving forward, that in the past the benefits were actually negotiated by the employees and they sacrificed salary because they knew that the medical benefit was a big deal. And I think it is still a big deal for these employees. They may not know it now, but they will when they retire and you're more apt to get ill. Things happen when you get older. Over the years, I've had my medical challenges and have been grateful for many of the health care benefits, as I am sure future retirees will be grateful. And thank you for the opportunity to give me my input today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Del. Anyone else? Yeah, Mike.
You guys received a copy of the letter with the signatures, so sorry, we'll start it out right. Morning. Members of the board, my name is Mike Smith, TTSA Safety Officer, and a letter was submitted to the board regarding this letter with 44 of the 49 current employees signed on to it in agreement with it, so I'm just going to read it for everybody to hear. So this letter was written after the August 17th board meeting that we're all here to discuss today. This is regarding proposed changes to TTSA's employee health benefits. So, dear members of the board, on behalf of the employees at TTSA that have signed below, this letter has been written to TTSA's board of directors to express our concerns regarding the modification of our health benefits in 2022, this year. We believe that this proposed change is being rushed, and we have concerns about the changes being proposed. We, as all those that sign this letter, respectfully request that the decisions regarding the proposed changes to our health benefits that were discussed during the Board of Directors meeting on August 17th, 2022, be pushed to 2023, and that we, the employees, would be able to have our concerns heard and considered at that time. Sincerely, TTSA employees. Sounds like you guys are already, sounds like you're moving in that direction, so just wanted to say that out loud and let you know that everybody here inside is in agreement with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Would anyone else like to comment?
Yeah.
Please.
Good morning. My name is Ged Mustang. I retired 2 years back, and I worked here about 33 years. I'm grateful for the past administration and the board of directors. I have to agree with Dale Cox. You know, I think the employees can make their decision, like we did at all times, on the gold and the platinum, or different options. What I think is the timing is not good. I honestly believe that you know it as well as I do. We live in a resort town, prices are up, and it's kind of spooky out there. Purge is taking a big hit financially too. So who knows, they might drop a bomb later on. We don't know. But I think the idea is good. I just believe that the timing isn't exactly the right thing. We're all going through a lot of stress, politically and academically and financially. But that's pretty all I need to say. And
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Aaron.
My comments are, my name is Aaron Carlson. I'm a senior engineer here at TTSA. My comments may not be germane, but I could draft it up based on the few information I received today. But I just wanted to, the board, you guys have a tough job in that you have to balance the act financially responsible and ensure the agency is financially acting in a financially responsible way to the public. So you guys are get in a tough position. The employees here, so you guys are looking at it from a financial concern. Employees are concerned with benefits, and I just want to say, we're all working together and trying to, and appreciate it allowing us to come up and voice our concerns. You guys could have just ran this through without any of our consideration, without listening to us. So thank you for that. In listening to everything, one of the things that I'm not hearing as a factor to consider is when we start tinkering with benefits, or what effect does that have on employee retention and recruitment? What I saw at my last job is kind of similar situation. The board had to make some very tough financial decisions. And what I saw is that they did a tiered benefit program. People that were in one hired after a certain date got benefits. Anybody after that date received another set of benefits. And what I saw was for those people that had as attractive benefit package, there was a lot of turnover in new employees, and it on paper saved the agency money, but there was hidden costs in terms of high turnover. And as we kind of make these choices, that would be something I would want to know, what's the effect? As a supervisor, what I've seen is that it's, when we hire, when we flew positions, it was difficult finding, can't getting a qualified candidate pool. And if we look at our job pool, which is primarily Reno, the high turnover model works if we have a large employee pool, Southern California. So just, I'm interested to know in terms of as we make these changes, what's the effect on turnover and retention. But thank you for hearing my comments, and do appreciate all of us looking together. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment to the board? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close.
President Wilkins.
Yes.
I had made an offer to staff that if anyone was uncomfortable, I would read their comments.
Okay.
I had one individual take advantage of that, so I'd like to read that comment on their behalf, and they do wish to remain anonymous. Good day, Board of Directors. I would like to express my point on the matter for discussion of employee health benefits. Here at this water reclamation plant, we do not just convey water from one point to another. As you know, part of what we do here is remove and treat the waste from the water. In doing so, we are faced with so many substances which have the potential to threaten our health and present with them the potential for a hazardous environment. I simply want to express to you how we should have a health care to match such a workplace. Please reconsider taking from what we already have.
Okay. Thanks. Any others?
No, that was the only one I received.
Okay. All right. If there's no further public comment, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the Board of Directors. Okay.
Understand.
I just tried to. All right. So public comments closed then, and I'll bring it back for discussion by the board. Anyone want to lead it off?
Go ahead, David, you're on that side.
Thanks, Dale.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
My concern was the time frame, the time element, putting the unnecessary stress on Vicki at the 11th hour. Also, my concern was I didn't want to see any erosion of the health care benefits for our most valued asset, our employees. If option 4 kicks the can down the road, so to speak, where the employees have an opportunity to assess what kind of financial impact it has on each and every one of you individually, that time frame between now and, let's say, the 1st of May, where everybody would have a chance to become a little bit more familiar with what we're talking about. I have a little bit more clarity than what I had last month, but there's still some uncertainty in the direction we're headed here, because I don't get it like Blake does 100%. But as long as the employees feel comfortable with the fact that they will have an opportunity to assess the financial impact on each one of your families, option 4 would be a situation that I would be in favor with. Option 3, no change at all, assures me that the people that have taken the time, the employees that have taken the time to come before us and voice their opinions, if they feel that that this is the right thing to do for them, and have no change at all, I'd be in favor of that as well. But if the employees have an opportunity in the next 6 months to gauge the financial impacts on their families, I'd be in favor of option 4.
Okay, thanks, Dale.
The issue is if we choose option 4 and we change the sharing amount for folks who choose, so option 4 includes providing platinum. So retirees, no change, at least for the next year. Again, option 4 says, we're going to look at this again next year. We want everybody to know. I think this is an annual thing we should do. But for this year, if we chose option 4, everybody can sign up for platinum if they want. Retirees don't have the cost-sharing option, so I would assume they'd all stick with platinum. For existing employees, you're talking about a different cost-share amount, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for the single, two-party, or family. They have to make that determination. There's 30 employees who've opted in to gold under our old cost-sharing plan. Now we're changing the cost-sharing, and they have to make that decision if they want to move back to platinum, or if someone in platinum, upon hearing this, goes, maybe it's time for me to move into gold, even with these reduced, but I think cost sharing that still makes, unless you have extenuating circumstances, more sense economically to move into gold. They have to do it during the open enrollment period. So they don't have 6 months. Open enrollment ends, it's open now, and it ends mid-October. So, Vicki, I think that you're going to need to have a full all-hands meeting, Vicki and Richard, if we opt that way, to share that. They all have the option to move up to platinum if that's not enough of a cost share. Again, that cost share, in my mind, I talked about platinum provides about 7% benefits for 50% more costs. I think the cost sharing that we're even proposing more than offsets, basically puts you at platinum, and it really depends on your individual circumstances, but I think if you look at it, and hopefully you can do some education, you'll find that we found when we moved to platinum to gold, that the provider network locally was identical. There's no loss in that. Wider, you have access to the UC Med centers. Some specialty hospitals are not preferred providers, so again, individual decision. But if you're a healthy person that's getting a checkup and all that, there's no change in the local provider network when we did all that research. So again, Dale, you talked about 6 months for them to assess. This is a decision, if we make it tonight, to change the cost share amount. Employees have to make that decision on whether they're going to stick with gold, move back to platinum, or move to platinum into gold during the open enrollment for 2023 calendar year in the next month. And so
they would need to make that decision regardless. It's
right. Well, they've already. If we didn't do anything, if we chose option, I think it was 1, where we kept the exact same cost share we have now, or looked at it, or we said we're never going to change anything, or at least for the foreseeable future. Folks still have to look at the cost share. The open enrollment period is now also, but there's not a change in the sort of relationship between the two, us and the employees. So, I just want to be clear with Dale that this isn't like over the next 6 months. The plan would be, in option 2, the only firm option we're taking is changing the cost share for those of you who choose to go to gold, and then kind of a heads up that we're going to be looking at things, and we'll see how CalPERS structures their health plans for 2024, and there'll be a discussion, and I don't know what decision we'll make. I don't know whether they're going to get rid of platinum and gold, whether gold goes up so much that there's no real incentive to go there. We don't know until they publish those costs, but just to, but there will be a discussion at that point.
Vicki, could you flip the slide to the one that has option 4 on it? Right. So, thanks for follow up on Blake's comments. There's really 2 components to option 3. One is basically stick with the platinum gold through this year, which I agree we should be doing. A second component of it, though, is instead of this 50-50 cost share, it's a fixed dollar amount cost share. So that's what's different, is the incentive to employees to use Platinum would change a little bit. Maybe.
To use gold.
To use gold, thank you. To use gold would change a little bit. And the other part of this is the plan on going to gold for 2024. That's the longer-term issue. Do I want to go for Platinum or gold this year? That's people need to make that decision in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
What happens next year? That's where the longer time period comes into play, because we need to see what the PERS plans are next year. So anyway, my sense is that as it relates to the incentive that's provided to employees to consider going to gold, that if our current incentive is actually costing us a bit more for certain employees, that's not what it was originally intended to do. If it's costing the agency more to accomplish that. So this, to me, seems like a reasonable alternative incentive that is still meeting the original intent of the board, which is give employees the ability to stick with Platinum, give them the opportunity to go to gold, provide a financial incentive to go to gold. If the financial incentive isn't large enough, then they can stick with Platinum. If it is, they can go to gold. It's a little different than it was last year, but I think it's still not unreasonable.
So after a year, and you find out that wasn't a good idea, can you switch back to the other, back and forth? You can't.
We could have a similar discussion
next year.
Yeah,
determine
okay.
what to do for plan year 2024. And may I add something in? Just a very quick and easy summary, I guess I would say. Option 1 is changing everything for 2023. Option 2 is leaving everything the same for 2023, but looking at changing for 2024. Option 3 is leaving everything the same and not even considering future options. And option 4 is leaving things the same, generally speaking, for 2023 with that change with the cost share portion.
On the incentive.
Yes.
Right.
And I know generally speaking, management and staff will make a recommendation, and if that is the case that we're going to make a recommendation, I would defer to the interim general manager to do so if he wishes.
If the board would want me to, I will.
Obviously, I want to hear your recommendation.
Yeah, so my concern as the one currently in the interim position, as I mentioned to the board, my recommendation was option 2. Option 4 was kind of a late to the table option. I like option 4 in the long run. The only thing I don't like about option 4 is if we're going to come back in 2024 and then do away with the cost share. If we're going to say this is our long-term go-forward plan, then I would recommend option 4. If we're going to look at next year pushing to gold and then ending, push to gold and end the cost share, then I would recommend option 2 to let staff make financial preparations, because that's some of the feedback I got from staff is they are using the HRA money for other medical coverages such as orthodontia, things like that. So that's where I'm at. Hopefully I'm clear on why I would go either direction.
I'm not sure if I understood it entirely, Richard.
So what I'm saying is if when next year rolls around and we push to gold, are we planning on with option 4? Are we planning on ending cost share altogether?
That wasn't the sense I heard on the board just now, but
I think 2024. Something we'll be dealing with July of 2023 once we hit the rates is a deliberation that we have to go through. It really is going to depend on the rates that come in. I think the intent, or I think the board expression is that we're going to look at it. I don't know how it's going to play out. It really depends on the plans that PERS puts together, and a discussion with staff and with management on what makes sense to go forward. So I don't know that we're making long-term plans. I mean, even option 3, which says we're not going to do anything, doesn't preclude us from revisiting health insurance. It shows an expression that we're not interested in changing, but I mean, if Platinum came in at some outrageous amount, I don't think that we're precluded because of some statement today that we can't do that. But
Yeah.
so
I think option 4 is a great compromise to move forward.
Okay.
I have a question. Vicki, I think early on, I think you said option 4 would provide possibly $77,000 in savings. Is that correct?
yeah, that was the number I ran.
Okay. So in my mind, we've got a $77,000 savings that potentially versus compressing the time frame for the employees to make these changes, creating a rush situation for staff to get everything put together. And I don't know, I'm weighing those two situations.
So I think the rush situation is option 1, because that requires all kinds of stuff to happen.
1 and 4 would.
Right.
1 and 4 would also.
What is it about 4? Because
Changing the.
what's
we
that?
we have a third-party administrator that performs our open enrollment for us,
Okay.
and they would need to change their software settings so basically what you're doing as an employee is you contact this group, and it could be any number of individuals that you might get on the other end of the line. They have this is how I gather it to be a little screen that tells them these are the options you can choose, and by clicking this option, then it sends you into a different realm versus where you might be if you chose a different option. So they would have to build the software. We would have to, so that would require time for them to do that, shrinking our open enrollment time period. Then we would have to prepare documents in order to share that information with staff so that we can do our open enrollment presentation to staff. I guess I'm personally, and I will do whatever work I need to do. However, it is a lot of work in a short time period in which we have to communicate all of that to employees, prepare all of it, communicate it to employees, get our changes into CalPERS, all within a very short, condensed time frame.
So Vicki, I'm confused. In option 4, there is no change in our contract with CalPERS. The only thing we're changing is at the beginning of 23, those who are in gold or choose to move into gold are going to get, that additional cost share, that incentive money placed in their HRA. There's no change in our CalPERS contracting because we're still going to contract for Platinum.
Correct. There would be no changes in CalPERS contracts. The changes would be with our third-party administrator for the open enrollment, so they'd have to make their changes within the software in order to communicate that to staff as they do their open enrollment meetings. And then for anyone that opts into a change from what they have now, those do require administrative changes on TTSA's part with CalPERS. Meaning if I'm in Platinum right now and I decide to go into gold, then I should use somebody else as an example. If Paul's in Platinum, decides to go into gold, I would have to go into CalPERS, into their software, literally make a change within that, all within the time frame that CalPERS allows us as their open enrollment.
Right. So that'll be the case regardless, because anyone could choose to switch back and forth.
Yes,
it's just a question of whether more people choose to make a move one way or
yes,
another.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. In option 2, however, there would be no necessary changes with the third-party administrator's software. So we could, and there would be no changes to communicate to staff. We all know what we have right now. We could literally move right into open enrollment. We could begin it immediately.
Do we have any, excuse me, do we have any information, have we made changes with that third-party organization before, and do we know how long that would take, or an estimate?
I have spoken to them and indicated that we had our meeting today, that there may be changes, and that I would communicate those to them immediately. They did say it would take them at least a week to do that.
Okay.
And I say at least a week, but generally speaking, they said around a week.
Okay.
I know that they're going to have a mock open enrollment for myself next week, just so they can quickly make those changes, test them on me as their test subject, and then we can move into open enrollment after that.
And you're an expert at this, compared to most people.
In the changes that
No, in just working with the particular software system. You're more familiar with it or not?
Well, they make their changes on their side, so I guess I would say from my side, yes, I am familiar with the changes, and I'm familiar with the software and how to utilize those changes, but actually making the coding changes that they need to make on
Right.
their side.
And where I'm going is, I don't think employees are, based on my personal experience with myself, that's a tough thing to navigate. For me, what button, and especially if I have changes from last year. I mean, it's a time consuming, and you want to get it right the first time type of thing. And I really worry about the compressed window. I really worry about that. And I think that we need to be cognizant of that, because I haven't been here, but I've heard a lot of things about employee morale moving forward, getting better. That's critical stuff. And I'm afraid that there's a potential for this to perhaps create some backslide. I think, Dale, that's kind of where you were coming from.
That's exactly where I'm at, Scott.
Yeah. Option 4 to me is, folks have already opted in to Gold, looked at it and chose that decision based on the cost share. All they got to do is look at the new amount of money and make that decision whether they want to stick with Gold or move to Platinum, or those that are in Platinum can look at this amount of money, and based on hopefully hearing this, maybe they've got new thoughts and maybe they'll move that way. And a change during the open enrollment from one plan to another is an option regardless, and I don't think is a huge administrative burden, and then changing our HRA program so that those amounts are contributed to those who enroll in Gold at the beginning of the year. That doesn't have to be done until the beginning of the year. There's no change in our contract with PERS. To me, I still think option 4 is really the right way to go, and the win-win for the agency and staff.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And I know that there's concern, but just I don't know. Are we ready to entertain a motion?
It seems like it. And it seems like there's slightly different opinions up here, but that's okay. So yeah, I think.
So option 4 will give the employees the right to choose whether they want Gold or Platinum.
Sure.
And we can move forward with the choice today.
Yeah, so my understanding is for option 4, there'd be no change for retirees. Current employees would still have the option to choose between Gold and Platinum. It's just that the financial incentive that we currently provide to choose Gold changes a bit. We've currently got this 50-50 kind of based cost incentive that is actually not 50-50 for out-of-state employees. And really, I think the intent here is to get that back more in line with that 50-50 goal, is how I see it in simple terms.
Okay, with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that the board chooses option 4 to move forward with this discussion.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Director Cox. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second by Director Trezin. Is there any further dialogue or comments on this? Seeing none.
Clarification on the, my earlier question about, can the employees at the next year just choose another plan if they're dissatisfied with the gold or the platinum? They can, during the enrollment period, they can change again.
Assuming those plans are available again, absolutely.
Yeah.
I apologize. I just wanted to clarify, because I think Dale might be confused from what he was saying earlier, that option 2 keeps everything status quo, including the 50% cost share. And option 4 changes the cost sharing.
Correct.
And takes away from what we're currently receiving. I just wanted to make that clear.
And I'm just going to reiterate that option 4, I believe, it does take away, but I think it more than offsets. I mean, the idea is you can choose platinum, we're still providing that, or gold. I believe that the cost sharing, those quantities in the right-hand column up there that you get if you opt into gold, basically gives you, covers the cost that you would have if you were in platinum plus some. You know, again, on an individual basis, depending on your health situation, but for the vast majority of employees, I think you're going to find that you have there is an incentive and a value in moving into that program. I think that our cost share really, as well-intentioned as it was, basically created a program, an idea of creating kind of a cost sharing, created a platinum plus, such a highly benefited incentive for changing that we now set the bar so high that we were not just kind of getting you to platinum, we were providing something that exceeded platinum, and that, you know, it just, yeah, I believe this is a really good.
Just to be clear, on my behalf, option 4 gives the employee the right to choose
Absolutely.
whether he wants platinum or gold.
Or she.
Say again?
Or she.
Or she.
He or she.
He or she.
Correct.
I get it. As long as the employee has the right to choose what plan they're in, moving forward with option 4, I will continue with my motion to move forward with option 4.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, is there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, why don't we go ahead and do a roll call on this, Rochelle?
Okay, Director Trezin,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion
Right.
approved for option 4.
Right, thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is discussion and approval of the updated employee handbook. Richard, you leading this?
Actually, Vicki will lead the
Vicki.
as well.
Okay.
I do have some comments along the way, but she'll get that over this.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome to
An important thing for us to deliberate exactly going on, and I have
Gold tokens. I don't know how they can make it more complicated.
You're talking to a merchant seaman, a ward of the federal government, because we're not responsible for
Good seeing you, Ed.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
I'm sorry.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Vicky.
Because I don't understand. That was the original.
Okay, the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Employee Handbook was last updated in April 2020. For those proposed updates, the ad hoc committee was reconvened and consisted of directors Blake Tresand and Leo Cox. Some significant changes have been proposed within the updated employee handbook, which include changes related to clarification or issues that occurred throughout time in which interpretation was required, changes to make reporting and processing more simplistic, and changes to benefit all employees of the agency. Some significant proposed changes include promotions will equate to a minimum of a 5% increase. Compensatory time will still allow the accruals up to 40 hours, and once those 40 hours have been used, they can re-accrue up to 40 hours, up to a maximum of 160 hours annually. Callback and standby duty have been changed so that travel time from the workplace is now compensable. The agency will provide an agency vehicle to those that desire to utilize one. When called back in a remote capacity, the employee will be compensated for a minimum of a half an hour per callback. And the agency has relaxed some of the response times required for standby in order to allow some more flexibility. Work schedules will now allow for alternate work schedules to be considered on a case-by-case basis. Special rate of pay for extra hours assigned during the work containing an agency holiday has been added. Vacation leave maximum accrual prior to now was a maximum of 240 hours, but now it will be 240 hours or 1.5 times the employee's accrual rate, meaning up to 360 hours for certain employees. Paid sick leave, the maximum accruals will now be 1,500. We will not allow accumulation beyond 1,500. And tuition reimbursement has been increased to $3,000 annually from $1,000. There are two changes that are being requested since we created the board packet. And those two items are include rest breaks, which Rochelle is on page 27 of that document. Under rest breaks, it was accidentally and unintentionally removed. There was previously the language under rest breaks said in that second sentence, if an employee works a 10-hour day, the 10 has been removed, and I would propose that we add 8 or 10-hour day. So at the very beginning of that second sentence, make an amendment. And then under paid sick time, we have proposed some language that states, actually, Rochelle, that's on page 34. You could go to sick leave or paid sick time. That sentence, is that page 34? Yes. Sorry, maybe scroll down more. But upon retirement, it begins with upon retirement. I would propose that we remove that completely for now. And when I say for now, the agency would like to move forward with the amended handbook if you choose to adopt it today. However, we would like in the future to move in the direction for the handbook to create a shell outline of the handbook using the existing handbook, and then create standalone policies from there that can be amended in a more timely manner as concerns come up. So when I say we'd like to amend that for now, we would very likely look into amending the sick leave policy again in the near future. Staff meetings were held to take employee suggestions related to the handbook, review proposed handbook changes, and to take additional comments. previously, the former general manager shared the handbook, the revised handbook, with department managers who provided feedback. And one last piece of information, I would like to read a suggestion that was provided by a long-term employee after the creation of this agenda, and it relates to holidays. And in his email, he states, "A topic I would like brought up and hopefully changed is when the agency chooses which day to observe a holiday. Case in point this year, where the agency decided to observe the 2 Christmas holidays on Friday the 23rd and Monday the 26th. The majority of staff don't work on Fridays anymore, so why observe the holiday on Friday instead of the official holiday dates of Saturday the 24th and Sunday the 25th? He goes on to say a little bit more, but basically he's asking that rather than observing agency holidays on, generally speaking, Fridays and Mondays, that we look at observing the holiday on the actual holiday. So with all this said, the recommendation to the Board of Directors is to approve the updated employee handbook with an effective date of September 25th, 2022, which is the beginning of our next pay period. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions from the board? I believe, Blake, that yourself and former Director Lewis were involved with some of this?
Yeah.
No, Director Cox. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Director Cox, I'm sorry.
Vicki, I was a little confused when you said there were 2 changes and then you went to the paid sick leave, and I think Rochelle highlighted I think the language that's in the packet talking about changing that, and then were you saying that you're not proposing a change in what's shown here, but you mentioned that there are certain sections like that may be pulled out of the handbook and dealt with on a case-by-case, kind of more of a standalone document that defines specific benefits? Or were you actually changing from this proposed sick leave maximum accrual 1,500 hours with the first 1,000 cashed out and the remaining 500 applied to service credit? Is there a change in?
So one of the changes is, so based on this draft handbook that you have before you, we would request that the language that we proposed in here that's highlighted up here on the screen, that we remove that for now, and that we will revisit that language when we look to amend that policy in the near future. That is one change that we would just like to remove that for now.
So are you also removing the bullet in the packet, the summary bullet that defines paid sick leave? Because that one doesn't seem to agree with what's in the packet.
Yeah,
comments.
there is more that is up higher in this in the page before. So what we are requesting is that sick leave will now be capped at a maximum of 1,500 hours. That is a change from our current handbook. So we would like to leave that language in. We would just like to remove this language that that provides that you must cash out the first 1,000 of that 1,500 hours, and that you must take service credit for the additional 500 upon retirement. We're just asking to remove that for now. We will revisit it when we amend this policy, very likely, I would guess around January of 2023. And then the second change I was asking for was an accidental omission on my part, unintentional removal of some existing language. Yeah, so we're not proposing any changes on that.
Okay.
So without that language, then if a person retires, they're going to get 1,500.
Yes, with this language, they would still get 1,500 out if they had accrued, whatever they have accrued,
right,
up to 1,500 hours. They can choose to cash it out. They can choose to buy service credit. That would be up to them.
Okay.
With the removal of this language, however, it would still be capped at 1,500 hours. And again, that's based on accruals. We're not just saying every person that retires gets 1,500 hours. Whatever they have accrued, up to 1,500.
Okay. Other questions?
Why is What's the thought process behind taking that one out?
So this was new language that's being proposed right now. So
Okay.
it's not in our current handbook. We were proposing it to be in the updated handbook. However, we've received some feedback from staff since proposing this on how it might affect them, number one. And number two, there is provide me with a brief moment here. And Blake, maybe you can help me out on this. There's a doctrine of, gosh, what's it called, Blake?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it. It's,
Me too. There it is. Doctrine of constructive receipt. That is the reason, that term is the reason that we propose this language. So we would like to get a little more information on that doctrine of constructive receipt. But basically what that says is when an employee retires, if you give them the option of cashing out or buying service credit, then any option must be taxable. If you tell them what they will receive, then the service credit option would not be taxable. That's why we threw that in there, but again, we've had some feedback since putting this information in there, and we'd like to do a little more research.
Thank you.
And Scott, are you familiar with service credit and the concept of service credit? So we not only do we contract with PERS for health insurance, but the district provides a pension plan for employees. And it's a defined benefit, and it's based on the number of years of service. And if you have sick leave that you've accumulated over time, I believe the district provides like 12 days a year, roughly, 96 hours. You know, and if you're not sick and you work here 20 years, you could have, you know, a pretty half a year or a year's worth of accumulated sick leave. You can either cash that out,
Right.
or you can tell CalPERS, I want service credit, and so you get the equivalent of an additional year of time you worked, which increases your benefit.
Thank you. Okay. I've got a couple of questions. It has to do with callback duty, standby duty, but more has to do with take-home vehicles. So what triggered the question for me is a comment or a sentence in both of those that says the agency will provide an agency vehicle for travel usage, but mileage will not be provided. So my understanding of standby duty is if we've got an employee or a group of employees that we want to have available to come into work should circumstances dictate it, but we're not certain. Maybe it's a snowstorm and we're putting people on, we want people to be available to come clear snow, but if it ends up raining, we don't need them, we don't call them in. If it snows, we need them, we call them in. So in practice, how does where we have this sentence saying the agency will provide an agency vehicle for travel usage, are we saying that anytime we ask an employee to go on to standby, that we also give them a vehicle to take home?
Yes.
And how, so is that the only circumstance where an employee would take a vehicle home?
Primarily, yes. There's been occurrences before where someone's going to training or something like that, and we might allow them to take the vehicle so they can leave from their home and travel straight to the training. But in this aspect, it would be only if they were placed on standby.
Okay. Do you ever have situations where you might ask someone to go on standby, but not, let's say folks are working a 410 shift, they've got 3 days off, they've gone home on Friday, and you need to put them on standby for Sunday, as an example. Obviously, you're not going to have them come in, grab an agency vehicle, drive it back to wherever their home is.
We usually pre-plan all the standby, so we usually place staff on standby around long holiday weekends, or as we watch the storm forecast come in, we preemptively put people on storm standby to respond to storm removal. So I don't ever recall a time where it's like Saturday, all of a sudden we realize we need to put somebody on standby. We're usually making those decisions during the work week.
Got it. And then what's the difference between standby duty and callback duty?
Standby is where we're compensating them to be available.
Yeah.
Callback would be someone who's not, they're not being paid to sit by the phone, but we need their expertise or who we happen to get a hold of kind of during a normal week, and they respond to take care of a situation. They fall under the callback duty instead of standby.
Okay, and this has that same language about a agency vehicle for travel. Sounds like that may not necessarily be relevant with a callback, because
that would be correct. Yes, yeah, I would say that's a misprint.
Okay.
So yeah, if you can call back, again, it's just normal
Something
day. Someone
came
goes
up.
home and something happens tonight. Hey, can you come in and take care of it? They're under the callback provision.
Got it.
And they get a 2-hour minimum, and that includes travel time now.
Includes travel time now.
Previously,
up to 1 hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in that circumstance, they probably wouldn't have a take-home vehicle.
No.
And then would we pay them mileage?
Help me remember on that one, Vicki. I think we said no
Yeah,
mileage
Vicki
because we're
did.
paying their travel time.
No.
Okay.
And that's what we were trying to cover under the standby duty, the no mileage portion of it, is if someone chose not to utilize an agency vehicle while on standby, we're saying we're not going to pay you mileage in lieu of.
Got it.
Either you take the vehicle or you don't, but that's all.
Okay. Is it normally snow-related where standby comes into play, or are there other circumstances?
Long weekends are really the 99% of the time it's long weekends outside of snow removal. Occasionally, if we're having
Rain
something
events.
that's acting a little weird, we may put someone on standby just as a precautionary, but those are few and far between.
Or maybe large rain events that are forecast where
Yeah.
there's
Most of it ends up being, in the
Rain
whole
or snow.
year, most of it tends to be storm event stuff on a
Yeah.
harsh limit.
Okay. So your suggestion is that we would take the language about the agency vehicle out of the callback duty,
Correct.
but leave it in for standby duty?
Correct.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion?
There's folks still here.
I'm sorry.
I don't know whether they're here to talk about this item or not.
You're right, I haven't taken public comment. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item?
Yeah.
Paul?
I was actually one of the ones that made a proposal early on throughout the process regarding jury duty. Our current policy it was decided not to be changed, but our current policy covers 10 days. After that, it's pretty much on the employee. There are numerous situations where I believe an employee could be called for service longer than 10 days, at which point they would be forced to use different types of pay, whether it's vacation, comp time, things like that. So in the case of, say, a federal grand jury or something, where something could go on for an extended period of time, a month or months, potentially weeks, whatever that might be, I have concerns that how do we make that employee whole? How it's their civic duty to perform this, and yet it could wipe out their entire vacation savings, their vacation bank, or put them in the hole to where they took no pay at some point. I'm concerned about that. I'm continue to be concerned about that as a frontline supervisor. I'm concerned not only for myself but also my staff. How do we address that? I'd like to continue to beat that drum a little bit as we move forward, and hopefully present that for your consideration. If not for this handbook revision, for at least future handbook revisions. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Other public comment?
I got one comment.
Oh, let me go ahead and close public
Okay, I'm
comment.
sorry.
And we'll bring it back to the directors. Go ahead, Joe.
During when we were having our meetings there, Blake, one of the concerns I had was if we had an employee that was a reservist and he was called to active duty, and it kind of chimes in with jury duty or extended leaves of absence due to being called to jury duty or be called into active duty being a reservist. Without going through and finding the place where we were talking about this, Vicki, are any of our employees reservists that are subject to this kind of call, being called to duty?
We have no reservists at this time, but if we did in the future, we would absolutely follow the law.
Okay, so we don't have any provisions in the handbook at this time, but if we did have a reservist, we would readdress the handbook at that time?
We do have, it's called a military leave, so we do have a military leave policy in here.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find it here real quick, but so it says military leave shall be granted as provided by applicable state and federal law. So we would absolutely do whatever was required of us to provide that leave to any reservist if we had someone in the future.
Okay, no further questions.
Just, Paul, I appreciate, your concern for your employees. I think it could happen. I've been at our organization for 20 years. We've never had anybody, that situation come up. I would say really rare occurrences like that, that would be brought to the attention of the general manager, and the board has discretionary authority to address these things. But as a general rule, I'm not. I think the policy is pretty consistent with virtually all other agencies and all that. But if we ended up in a situation like that, I certainly would think that the board would be apprised of the situation, and if it was an undue hardship, considered on a case-by-case basis. But I think the policy as it stands is good, and that goes for a lot of things. You can't anticipate everything that comes up.
Okay. So, is there any further questions or comments by board members?
As a member of the ad hoc committee on the employee handbook, I move to adopt the changes to the handbook as proposed by Vicki.
And I'll second that motion.
That's with modifications that have been discussed.
Correct. Both on the packet and the additional ones provided.
Okay. All right. I got a motion by Blake, second by Dale. If there's no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Great. Let me moment. Back to the agenda. Next is item 4, which is approval of the agency organizational chart.
And again, Vicki's taking the lead on this one with backup support from Michael Peak and myself.
Great.
Okay, the operations department is requesting one additional full-time equivalent position within the operator OIT 123 series. The temporary increase in number of FTEs will help with an announced upcoming retirement, expected succession planning due to that retirement, the need to always have at least one grade 3 operator on staff, and a need for experienced and qualified staff to cover the rotating shifts. And the recommendation to the board of directors is to approve the updated organizational chart, which adds one additional FTE to the operator series with an effective date of September 21st, 2022. Any questions?
Okay. Questions or comments by board members? I have one question. So you referenced this was partially related to a pending retirement. But this is a permanent addition to staff we're talking about. So usually with a pending retirement, sometimes you might overstaff for a couple of months, and then the retirement happens, but the total number of FTEs stay the same. That's not what we're talking about, though. What we're talking about is a permanent additional employee.
That is correct, and this kind of identifies the handbook where we talk about other policies. Vicki and I have been having numerous discussions about policies that would be very beneficial. One would be, I'm used to overfill, so your FTE number would stay the same, but you would get authorization to overfill it, and then when that retirement or a vacancy was created, the numbers then would work out, and you're back to just being what your identified FTEs are. So with lacking that, that's why we brought it in this format, was to increase the FTE by 1. In the future, we do wish to do a policy that would address overfill, underfill type scenarios.
So is the plan to permanently have an additional operator, or just for this transition period when we're overfilling?
I'll go and then I'll let Michael fill in the difference, but the plan would be once a retirement takes place, then we'd be whole, so that it would not be long-term addition. It's just a temporary addition until a retirement or a vacancy takes place.
Okay, but we're putting it on our org chart as though it's a permanent long-term.
Correct.
Okay.
Did I address that accurately, Michael?
Yeah.
As far as
yes, that it would be a temporary, basically overfill in the position, even though, but since we don't have the policy to cover overfill, we put it as an FTE. This is to get succession planning, to get.
No, I can appreciate the value of, especially if you've got someone retiring, you get a person who would backfill that individual here to have some overlap. It makes a lot of sense. I completely support it. It seems like a kind of an odd way to do it versus just saying, yeah, go ahead. But anyway.
And I don't see why we couldn't just, if you guys approve, yeah, go ahead. We don't necessarily have to add it as a FTE. I don't think I'm not aware of any resolution or ordinance that would require that.
Not that I'm aware of.
And the reason I bring it up is, these org charts and the number of approved positions, they basically, what we're officially doing is adding a position to the organization, even though it sounds like, which has cost implications long term, even though it sounds like that's not really what the need is.
I think we'd be fine if we wanted to amend the approval to us being allowed to overfill the position until the retirement took place. If we can do that.
You may, as an option to the proposed agenda item, you could just by motion adopt that policy so it's in the record.
Basically authorizing the general manager to overfill the position.
In anticipation of a retirement.
In anticipation of a retirement. Be fine with that.
With 16, looks like 16 people in that sort of train, is in the benefit of overfilling. I mean, is that going to be a frequent thing, and is it better just to actually incorporate that number in so that you have the ability to do that, but you staff at the desire. You don't have to always staff at the number of FTEs on there. So the other option is, maybe that's just a good thing. You have 15 folks. You're going to have retirements happening, I'm guessing, on a fairly frequent basis, and I mean, it really is 6 of one and a half dozen the other. The bottom line is, I think we support you guys going out and recruiting for somebody. Do we want to have you come back every time you want to overfill, or do we do this and it just gives you the ability to staff, the kind of belt and suspenders and cover that area?
To kind of fill that in a little bit, part of the reason we came forward with this is we are in the process of doing hiring for. We had an open FTE. We had 2 very strong candidates apply, and because we had 2 very strong candidates apply, even though they are in an OIT position, looking at that and kind of going back a little bit over the last year or so, every time we've flown a position to fill an FTE that's open, we've got entry-level staff or entry-level applicants who have been applying. It takes an amount of time to get these entry-level applicants to be trained and certified, to be able to be competent to run the plant, fill in for operations, cover shifts. We're just looking at the future. We've got probably, I'd say, 3 positions right now that are on the bubble, could leave any time, or that are within that retirement age. we're just trying to get these entry-level people trained up to a level that they can really benefit the agency before some of these vacancies come open. Again, if one of these positions that are on the bubble now were to leave, I don't see overfilling again. I think that this, filling these positions, having this one overfill would cover us until a second opening came up, and then you would want to fill that to maintain the FTEs that you have.
My preference would be to have an overfill policy. That way, as President Wilkins mentioned, that way when people look at our website, look at our org chart, they're seeing our real-time budgeted FTEs. I think we have the overfill. It gives us that flexibility on the fly, whether it's in Michael's department, Jay's, or Crystal's, to overfill someone as a succession planning.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want that to have to come back to the board. That should be within the discretion of the senior management and general manager.
So the item that was agendized was update an employee, organizational chart. Can we, within the guidelines of that item, can we modify that to, have a motion to allow overfilling, as deemed necessary?
Yes, I think you can, Blake, especially because the preceding agenda item was consideration of updated employee handbook, and these two items are linked in a bit. So I'm fine with the board adopting that alternative approach to this particular recommended action because it solves the management's desired flexibility.
Okay.
So I would make that motion. Most importantly, it sounds like you got two folks you want to make offers to.
Correct.
That we're saying that you can move forward with that.
We have made a conditional offer to one because we did have an open FTE, but we've held off until we got approval to move forward with the other conditional offer.
Got it. So motion by Blake, it would, I believe the motion was to authorize the general manager to overfill, it's to provide the general manager with flexibility to overfill positions in order to, when there's pending retirements coming forward.
To temporarily overfill.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would apply not only to this situation, but future situations.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Okay, wait a minute. Rochelle, could you repeat that motion?
Authorization for general manager to overfill positions for pending retirement.
Okay.
Shouldn't it be temporarily?
I'll
For
second that
temporary
motion.
overfill?
Yes.
Got it.
In anticipation of
In anticipation. Got it.
And would it be draft a policy?
Sure. Well, if that goes in our employee handbook or if it goes somewhere else, but.
And if we go that route, we can move forward, but we can also bring back the policy, and then if there's any
You can
small
ratify
revisions.
this motion with policy.
And draft policy.
Once again, I second that motion.
Thanks, Dale. Got a motion by Blake, second by Dale. Any further discussion? Did we take, I think I took public comment on this, but in case I didn't, I'll open it up again. Okay. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Great. Okay, next is approval for the general manager to negotiate a contract with a qualified service provider to perform the rebuild of a DNR influent pump number 1.
That's correct. So we had BNR influent pump number 1 experienced a drive motor failure. During that repair, we decided it'd be prudent to pull the pump because it's never been removed for inspection. We pulled it and sent it to the factory service center in Fresno. They did a tear down and inspection on it, and it came back that the pump is in need of a complete overhaul. We then advertised for bids, received none. So we're asking for authorization to basically negotiate with Trillium Pumps in Fresno, the factory service center, and based on the proposal for repair we got from them, the price should not exceed $50,000.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Blake, second by Scott. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Those in favor signify by saying, any other comments or questions?
I got a question. Richard?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing that we have one of these pumps sitting on our shelf for emergency standby purposes, or is this a pump that is too expensive to have one just sitting on the shelf?
It's one that would be too expensive to have sitting on the shelf.
Okay.
And we kind of have in essence, we have our emergency backup is in place. So that way we don't miss a beat. So we have 3 total. With normal flows, I believe we can handle it with just 1. Sometimes on high flow events, we do need a second one, but the spare backup one is actually in place.
So without having a backup pump on the shelf, the repair time is for turnaround for this pump is how long?
In this case, some of the materials are 11 weeks.
11 weeks. And so we have a backup system in place in case we have a pump failure that we can continue on without jeopardizing the integrity of our operation?
Yeah, it would be highly unlikely to have a pump fail. These type of pumps, they'll lose efficiency, but they'll keep going. It's more likely for us to have a motor failure, which we actually already have the other motor repaired and back. So in the event we lost another motor, we would just swap that motor in a couple hours and be back up and running.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Great. Next on the agenda is approval of change order for the rebuild of a Centrosys CS21-4 rotating assembly and Disco Plenum hydraulic back drive.
Okay. Wow. You got that all spit out there in order, didn't you?
I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm talking about.
So I'm up again. So as the board probably recalls, we sent out one of the centrifuges for rebuild. During the inspection and tear down, there was some additional cleaning that needed to take place, as well as some damage that was outside of the bid. Those changes total $8,100. The original bid cost was $35,000, so bring the total repair to $43,100. We had budgeted $50,000 for the project. So we're asking for approval to issue a change order in the amount of $8,100 to cover the additional repairs and cleaning.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by the board?
Mm-hmm.
There is seeing no public comment on this item. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Director Trezin. Does anyone care to make a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director Cox. There's no further discussion by the board. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Excellent. Next is, let's see, discussion of modification to change order resolution to include change order authority for service-related contracts and agreements.
So this is, in light of the previous change order you just approved, we realized that there was no authority granted to the general manager to issue a change order for service-related contracts. The resolution that had been drafted only covered construction contracts. So requesting authority to redraft and amend that resolution to include service contracts. And additionally, we had an item that just came up with a current contract that's taken place where the contractor found some conditions, unforeseen conditions, and I may defer a little bit to Jay because this is in his realm. And it's also open or identified another area with the existing resolution for change orders that, for lack of a better term, ties our hands a little bit when a contractor comes across an unforeseen condition like this. And if I can defer to you, Jay, to give the nuances to it, that would be helpful.
So this is the 2022 control rooms upgrade project. The contractor removed the countertops, cabinetry from down in the control room. And when they did that, they discovered that the window was leaking. That's above the counter. When they dug into it further and they removed some of the drywall, they found dry rot. And the current thinking is that it extends a lot further than what they've opened up so far. The issue at hand is that was a $160,000 contract, and the board approved a 10% contingency on top of that, which would be a $17,000 authorization for change orders. And the thinking is that, well, first, we don't know what the costs are going to be. Guess there's two options. One is you can just patch it up and forget about it, but that's not what we're recommending. We think if we find a problem like this, we should, while we're in there and doing an upgrade, we should fix the problem. So part of the issue is that, we don't know what the total cost is going to be, but potentially it could be more than the $17,000. And the current resolution has a stipulation that the aggregate total of the project change orders on the job cannot exceed that contingency, the 10%. So we find ourselves in a little bit of a conundrum this morning in terms of we can give a field order for them to do the work, yet we don't know what the costs will be, and it could be that those costs exceed what that authority allowed.
Yeah, so our request is to go back, amend the resolution addressing these two issues, and then bring back for board approval of the new resolution, or amended resolution, I should say.
And then we have the immediate challenge of we're holding up the contractor as of now, this morning's discovery, and do we have a temporary, I don't know, Dick, if this is
so I think what we could do is, we've got the item on the agenda related to the providing direction to update our change order policy, which I'm supportive of. We'll see if the other board members are or not. We've got a separate topic where Jay's said, hey, we've got an ongoing construction project that we may go up above and beyond our current expenditure authority on. Speak now or forever hold your peace. If we come back to you with a change order recommendation at the next board meeting, please don't string us up for exceeding our change order authority, because we're giving you a heads up now. And if we want to tell you to patch it up and forget about it, we could do that now, kind of, or not. So I think that's how I see that piecing together.
Correct.
Yeah. So why don't we take item 7, and then maybe when we get to department reports, we could come back to that topic.
Okay.
And so for item 7. Does any member of the board have any questions or comments on the staff's recommendation to update that policy?
No, that seems to make sense. So you're saying under, on bid projects, we typically provide some contingency depending on the size of the project and the unknowns. We estimate how much a not to exceed amount should be, but we don't do that typically with professional service contracts. And so you're saying let's give you guys a little bit of leeway for unforeseen circumstances.
Correct. It would be basically adding language that would match what's available on the construction contracts to match a service contract.
That makes sense. And I'll just say, and I guess we're going to discuss this more later, but I think we're on the topic. I mean, you never know what you might encounter, and it's hard to provide a contingency that can account for anything unless we just basically open the doors. You know, the way we deal with this at TSD is, and Richard, you've done this already, I think, in Dan's absence. You've called me a couple times and said, something's come up, we need to move this forward. Can I just at least, I've talked to a board member to get authority to move forward, and then you bring it to the board to basically ratify something that's already been done. So the auditors are happy, you know, we followed policy, and that's still going to have to happen. You know, there's still going to be situations where, you know, unless you provide an unlimited contingency, you never know what circumstances might arrive, and that would be, I think, something that a general thing would be to call the board president, let them know about the situation, and kind of at least you've checked in and gotten sounded that off, and then, you know.
I think that is a good way to do business. You know, from my perspective, when staff brings a service contract to us, a construction contract, whatever. What I would hope is that, you know, staff is evaluating the risk of potential unknowns given the type of work. You know, making a reasonable estimate as to how much flexibility you may need that you can just exercise at your level, and then you'll probably get it right 75% of the time, and then there may be other times where you need to come back to the board and request additional contingency authority. And really, in my mind, that's what that's doing, is it's setting a trigger as to how much can staff just handle versus when do they need to come back and get additional expenditure authority from the board. And I think in general, we want to give you the latitude to just get the job done and not have to keep coming back with what I would characterize as busy work, you know, to update us on things that are going on.
Can I add something to that? That especially the concern is in the timing, right? You know, so like if we had to wait a whole other, so we discovered this morning, if we had to wait a whole other board cycle, that'd be 30 days.
Right.
And so oftentimes.
And then it'll cost twice as much.
Yeah, and you're holding up a contract that you potentially claim.
Right.
So I think what maybe you're proposing is that a channel is opened up between the general manager and the board president?
Well, I think it's kind of a question of the level of trust between the staff and the board, right? Where as the GM, you said, hey, we got something that came up, that go a little bit beyond our expenditure authority, want to give someone a heads up on this, because we don't have time to wait till the next board meeting, but we'll bring it back at the next board meeting. I think that's what.
I think for us, some verbiage that would account for that would work for us. And as Blake mentioned, the purchasing policy has some verbiage in there. That's why I've done that a couple times to meet that. So if it pleases the board, we could put some verbiage in the resolution that says if there's an unforeseen condition that's going to look to exceed, the general manager would contact 1, 2 board members and then bring it to the subsequent board meeting for approval.
Right.
Perfect.
Yep. So this was a discussion. I don't know if you necessarily need a motion on this.
No motion is required.
You're just looking for direction.
Yeah.
And the next one is discussion on landscape improvement and provide plans for review.
So in the packet were plans. We do have some hard copies here if anyone wants the hard copy to look at right now.
It's easier than looking at it.
Yeah.
Everybody else wants?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I'm looking at pictures. I like to say is inviting board members to review landscape plans is incredibly dangerous. There's always going to be opinions.
Where are you going?
I'm going to go get a drink.
There's also
No,
snacks.
I'm not quitting.
Yeah, there's snacks in the GM office.
All rise.
Is there anything in that fridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's fresh coffee.
Go ahead, though, Rich.
Okay.
Yeah.
So several months ago, we had brought some preliminary plans to the board and offered for review. These are updated, taking into account that feedback that we received. So we wanted to provide them. Again, it's only a discussion item. So we wanted to get feedback from the board on those changes that were made, which included signage. Just a reminder to everyone, we're looking at artificial turf and replacing all of the natural turf out front. Were some of the items that had come up when we brought the plans previously. So those are the changes that have been made to these plans. And I think those were the primary ones to address. Artificial turf everywhere, signage, replacing the original wood sign coming in at the entrance, another sign at the corner directing people to the admin office area. I think we might have added some additional pavers to replace some of the concrete walkways that are kind of getting seeing degradation out there from just the winters. So here they are. Any feedback would be appreciated, and then we'll know what direction. It is a budgeted line item in this budget year. With the time it took us to get plans finalized, and we're missing the construction season for this year. It'd be something that we would be looking at doing in spring, summertime.
So Richard, on the second sheet, L11, the hatching that looks like a little kind of marshy hatching, is that the astroturf or the fake grass? It's kind of the area that kind of surrounds the parking. It's like a little teeny sprig of something.
Yeah, there is a planning and...
I couldn't see the key for that. And I didn't see a call out for what that...
If I recall correctly, the area around the existing pond was going to be like a zero-scape area with DG and some other items. It looks like they did include some. As I'm looking at the spriggy looking everywhere else matches that. So it is a combination of zero-scape and artificial turf.
So you're asking us if we want to provide design comments on the landscaping plan for the front yard?
Yes. Okay. Any feedback? Because the next would be to find, because we issued a change order to make the modifications that had come up in the previous board meeting. So want to finalize, go to 100%, and then that way we can pass off and start doing contract documents, those kind of things, and make it happen. So it was kind of the last chance to get your guys' eyes on it and say it looks good, or no, I really don't like particular items.
Yeah, I think Dale's talked about this. The area is degraded out there. Doesn't show the pride in the organization that we think it belongs. It's time, after 50 years to update that. And the original plan, I think, had a lot of grass and the maintenance items, and so I think you guys have incorporated that, expanded some parking spots, and so I think you're on. As long as you guys don't have something that you don't like on this, I would certainly say proceed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, staff had no concerns with the changes. It was just
now, I got a question, Richard. This has been something that we kind of put on the back burner for one reason or another. Most of it was because of failure to be able to secure a contractor to do the work. Was that correct?
Most of the delay was actually just getting the plans from the landscape architect, and just that COVID delay that we're experiencing everywhere affected getting these plans out, and then we were down staff with a group that was kind of driving this for a while, so it became a lower priority.
That's right. So basically, we'd be ready to execute this plan in spring?
Spring, summer, yes. So we hit the construction season coming in spring, summer, and perhaps in the fall.
So now, are we going to put this out to bid, or how is the architect going to put it out to bid? How is this going to happen?
No, we'll put it out to bid, and I had some conversations with Jay. This originally started within the maintenance wheelhouse. Based on the scope now, it's somewhat beyond what the maintenance staff's expertise are as far as managing a contract and such. So hopefully Jay doesn't throw a rock at me, but we talked about transitioning it from this point over to engineering for construction documents. Going out to bid, it's a fair amount of money with all the AstroTurf, as you know, is not, it's a substantial investment, so it drives that price up and gets it up in the realm of definitely a public works contract.
So if we say good, the next time we probably see this is when you guys will have bid the project and you're looking for an award, or are you going to
authorization to go to bid?
Yeah, I think
you're looking for authorization to go to bid, or
that would be the next step if you're good with
all right.
with it as is. Would be the authorization to go to bid,
and then we'll see it again after the bids come in.
Yes,
and then okay.
Other questions or comments? Design advice? You asked, so I've got some, which would be, I would suggest you might see if you can add even more parking spaces. It seems like our parking lot's full pretty frequently, and I don't know what the future of the agency holds, but if we end up with additional staff as time goes on, this would be the time to add it if we're messing around with paving items out there.
Okay.
I'm okay as long as I got my handicap sticker.
Yeah.
We might need more than one handicap space, is what he's trying to say.
And I heard that.
If you get above 25, then the 26 space has to be ADA.
Or we can carpool.
Or we can
That's
carpool.
the whole, yeah.
Can we get the
So you
stripes,
probably will need a
the
second one.
parking white lines for those of us that are parking challenged?
Sure.
Do some striping.
I'm just curious.
We can. It wears off every winter after we plow. So.
Even myself.
Jay
Might
mentioned
not be
before
very
that it
straight,
actually
but-
takes away parking spaces when
It
you
does.
get space for the lines. They had it drawn up before and it reduced the number of
It's especially troublesome because it's a wedge.
Right.
So no lines. Is what I'm hearing.
You guys can decide that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sounds like
So
a good
a recommendation to add
conversation. Right?
additional parking.
Noted.
So again, I believe this is a discussion item, no action needed.
Yeah, it was just a discussion item.
Thank you, Richard, for bringing this forward.
You're welcome.
Next is the approval of the annual employee appreciation dinner. Who'd like to handle this?
I think I'm up again. So, in light of the COVID years, we had suspended doing the annual employee appreciation dinner. Now that COVID seems to be getting in the rearview mirror somewhat, we would like to get authorization for $6,500 to plan an annual employee appreciation dinner as we have in the past.
Sounds like a great idea. Is there any further question, comment? No public here for public comment.
Nice. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Do you need action on this, or is it just an update?
It is an approval for the $6,500 in funds.
Would anyone like
So
to make a
moved.
motion?
I'll second.
Gail, seconded by Dave.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? None. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Great. Discussion of Finance Committee appointment to replace vacancy. So Lane was on the Finance Committee, no longer on the board. Blake's on the Finance Committee as well. And I assume anyone else who wants to be on the Finance Committee?
I'd like to solicit Scott's interest, and if he's willing, it's a great way to.
So you don't
Jump.
want me
That's exactly what he said.
That's exactly. And I don't have a problem with it, Blake.
I think it's not that I don't want you. I just think if Scott's willing, it's a great way to really come up to speed, because in the finance committee meeting we really dig into all the aspects of the agency, because they all have financial implications, and so it'd be great to, if you're willing, Scott.
Absolutely.
I'd like to nominate Scott. If
I
there's
so
a
move.
Process good.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. No, there's no public comment on this item. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Scott.
Opposed?
Fastest one yet.
Hey, there's extra pay involved with this,
What's that?
There's extra pay involved with that.
Days of
I
service.
understand that.
Okay. Wow. So Blake just doubled your paycheck.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, so you get paid on a per meeting basis here. Discussion. Next item is discussion and possible vote to select a Placer County LAFCO alternate special district commissioner.
I thought we already done this.
We didn't nominate any of our folks for that, but now they've got nominees, right?
That's correct. Last month, they were seeking nominees. This month, they've received nominees, and they're requesting the board to vote on one of the three nominees they have.
Right. Go ahead, Blake.
I read the candidate statements for all three, and they all looked like they were good. The second one seemed to stand out, though. I forget the fellow's name now.
The city manager.
Okay, hold just a second here,
And
because
the fire
I need a
district.
little bit of refresher on this. I thought we had voted Stevenson from the airport board to be our LAFCO representative.
We did.
And what happened there?
He's still there. He was previously the alternate, so he moved up to the permanent seat.
Okay.
This person, if Rick can't be at a meeting, this person is the
an
person
alternate.
who will fill in for him.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
So Stevens is still our rep?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it seems like we're doing this every meeting.
Yeah,
That's what I kind of.
So I know at the Taos City PUD board, I didn't have a strong opinion on this, but I had some fellow board members that were that felt strongly about Earl Wilson, who's the retired city manager, as the LAFCO rep. So
He's on the cemetery district.
yeah, it's interesting. He's a cemetery district board member, but he was a 40-year. He was a city manager for a long period of time, and I think they thought that with that as in his background, that he would be a good,
Pretty good with the dead. Is that what you're saying?
probably good with the dead and
Yeah.
good with living, and probably knows his way around
Yeah.
public process and these kinds of things.
What do you think there, Blake?
Well, unfortunately, none of them are from the east side.
Yeah.
That would be the general, vote we give if there was a representative from our part of Placer County. Again, in reading it, I thought the second person, William Carl, really put the effort into, his candidate statement and on a fire district, and hit a lot of buttons for me. I think, I think all three of them sounded good. And I noticed also that the third one does have this city manager background, which is great. So I'm not sure whether they did it just because he was a city manager. They actually have interacted with him. I don't know any of these folks personally, so I really can't judge it. I'm judging it purely on the paper. So if Dan's...
So it was Judy Friedman, who's on our board. She knew this person, don't know how, didn't quiz her on it, but she felt pretty strongly that he would be a good alternate for LAFCO. So that's what our board did. So.
Yeah, I mean...
What with who?
Earl Wilson.
Yeah, no, I have no...
He's closer anyway, that's a good guy.
What's
Closer to the east.
No. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, I would assume your boards are.
We got to meet next week, so this is not on our agenda as of yet.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll go with whoever TTSA decides.
Yeah. There we go.
The one thing I noticed in the comments of the second candidate was he was discussing fire, and he's got experience with interacting with other fire agencies and moving that forward. And it was kind of ironic that we were breathing in smoke. And for me, that was something that stood out with that individual, because I think we all have to be very aware moving forward.
Well, LAFCO is more about public agency governance and structure and stuff like that. So and that's why it's like, city manager, usually they're going to kind of know their way around that kind of stuff, just maybe more so than others might. So anyway.
So based on somebody who seemed to know the person, I would move that we put our vote in for Earl Wilson.
I'll second that there, Blake.
Moved by Blake, second by Dale. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Great. Thank you. Next is discussion of in-person Board of Directors meeting. You guys want to meet in person next month?
I would say so.
Okay. Any game for that? Any concerns?
October 19th.
Either way.
It was good to, especially given tonight's agenda, it would have been really hard to do or effectively on Zoom, and so
I've had my fifth COVID shot. I'm good.
Yeah. I've let Blake know I'm not going to be here for the October 19th board meeting. And sorry, Richard, I haven't had a chance to let you know that. I'm going to be out of town that day, or that week. So it sounds like the board would prefer to do in person again? Yeah. Okay. Why don't we plan on that? Why don't you plan on that? And then let's go to management team report and department reports. Operations.
All right, good morning, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. Special welcome to Mr. Wilson's first meeting. For the operations report for August, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. Plant performed well through the month. Water information management's WIMS implementation is ongoing. We're still working with Hawk to implement that. We cleaned and inspected Side 2 grit chamber at Headworks. We had 0 completed work orders and 1 pending. And for lab staff performed the necessary lab testing. The lab LIMS system is still ongoing, and the expected completion date as of now is September 30th. Staff have completed preparation for the laboratory quality manual and other documentation in accordance with NELAC, or the TNI standard, and the lab is in the process of implementing a quality system. They had 0 completed corrective actions and 0 pending. And that's all I have for operations. Any questions? And again, I will go back to that we are reaching out. I think the last board meeting we discussed that we're in the process of hiring for an FTE, and we have at this time extended I'll move the word, Vicki, conditional offer of employment to one person, and moving forward with that. Any questions?
Great. Any questions for Mike?
Can you say, are those 2 candidates that you're actually thinking of offering, are they locals that are trying to get into the industry? Or they're
neither local.
Okay.
They're from out of area. Both of them.
They're what?
Both are from out of area.
Where? Are you going to have to move into the
Southern
general area? Oh, wow. Okay. Willing to do that. That's as an OIT. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Great. Maintenance department report.
All right. Morning again, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. So up first, just the overview of the numbers. Just wanted to highlight, if you recall, last few months, the mechanical have been up around 200. You can see we're bringing that down. Some of that is just wrapping stuff up, and others are refining as we still transition into Lucity with the preventative maintenance and make that transition from the old system. Sharing screens with Rochelle because I cannot see that far. So big topic, firewall configuration that has to do with our IT security. So that's a huge enhancement right there. So we're wrapping that up, and part of that is also doing a complete separation between our SCADA and business networks, which is standard across the industry. So we're getting up to speed there, and that goes right along with our SCADA IT master plan. Continue to do Wi-Fi upgrades. That's to enhance the system as we transition into tablets for the use of Lucity, as well as doing a public Wi-Fi to enhance the hopefully to enhance employee morale a little bit with giving them the ability to connect while at work. Continue to work on developing a new website, the SCADA IT master plan. Lucity had the opportunity to do a show and tell with TSD here last week, which was nice. Continue to support the lab with LIMS and operations with their LIMS, and then engineering with roofing and coating projects. Internally, we installed a new windsock, as you can probably see by the chlorine building. It's hard to miss. It's now lit, which enhances safety for after hours in the dark. We completed the epoxy floors in the E&I shop, so we're continuing to work on the shop moves. Burn area remediation, we wrapped that all up. All the trees that were dead are down and chipped up. We left a few at the recommendation of fire for the animals to nest in, and then we'll look again at them next year. They were all ones that could possibly survive. If they don't, we'll probably drop them for safety. Reconfigured the loop storage room, another safety enhancement, getting drums off of pallet stackers and getting it up to a more standard drums on spill containment. We did aerial lift training, which were some of the photos that were up. Let's go to the next screen. So, as you recall, we asked for funds to purchase a used man lift. That is done, and that is now our man lift that you see in the photos. And so far, it's proving out to be a good purchase. Next slide. So, we decided to actually run conduit for the new floatar that's going in the parallel line for the influent metering. So we started potholing and trenching out there. Next slide. Ryan Schultz wrapped up his project he's been working up on. The old AWT, if you guys remember, they were the old salmon-colored control panels that were obsolete. He's removed all of the stuff and transitioned it over, and then placed up the black plexiglass for a nice appearance. And this goes along with the control room upgrades, and then as they wrap those up, we'll have screens up for the operators to see SCADA and the front, all the security cameras. Any questions on maintenance IT?
Yeah, I got just a question, Richard. As far as any update on what's happening with the gal that caused all this mayhem, is it the Forest Service, or is this Nevada County that's going to take on the disciplinary?
Should be the DA, right?
What is it?
Should be the Nevada County District Attorney.
Where's this headed? This is a pretty important issue for me, only because this was, an intrusion on our security. It put us to the test, so to speak, on our security systems, and it resulted in some significant damage to the agency and our grounds. And where's this headed with the DA?
So we filed paperwork with the DA for the cost of doing the remediation. I know in talking with the fire chief, they were filing paperwork as well for restitution. The last update I had gotten was she was due to have a court date September 6th. I have not gotten any update, and I may have to reach out to them. They probably aren't going to feel too obligated to call me up and tell me what the status is.
Right.
So we'll probably just have to kind of watch the news, and I can reach out You know, I would expect September 6th is going to come. They're going to probably ask for a continuance to push it out. So
There hasn't been anything in the press.
yeah, then
So Scott, what Dale's referring to is the lady that lit the fire. Yeah.
I got the alert on my phone that day. I was like, where?
Yeah.
Then I saw it. Yeah.
So I would imagine at some point as it goes to trial, we may get contacted because we did amend the police report and ask them to file trespassing charges against her. So if they move forward with prosecution, we may get contacted to provide testimony or video footage. We did provide that all to PD when they did the report, so they do have that. But so far, the last I heard was September 6th was when she was due to be in court.
Right. And at the end of the day, I think it's in the district attorney's hands, and whether it goes to court, what the charges are, whether they choose to enter into some kind of a plea bargain. I think all that stuff's kind of really out of our hands.
Now, when you say the DA, that's the Nevada County?
Yes.
Okay.
Did we go anywhere with the signage? We talked about that.
Yes, I reached out to the police chief, and they put me in touch with one of the lieutenants there, and I'm just waiting to touch base with her to have a conversation about what they would need signage-wise to be able to enforce it and everything. So it's still pending. But
Yep.
it is,
Yeah. Okay, next, engineering department.
Good morning, President Wilkins, directors. So, projects under construction for this past month, this would be August. I'll give you a little update too on some of these. The chlorine scrubber itself is being delayed due to supply chain issues, so that's still in pre-construction, I'll call it. At this point, it's likely to be installed in next spring instead of this fall. Roof repair project is now complete, save one manufacturer site visit to buy off on the roof. Plant coating project is done, except for one punch list item to repair some damage the contractor had done. Control room upgrades, that's the subject of the earlier conversation regarding the leak in the wall and the dry rot. So I don't know if you want to have further.
I mean, I think you've given us a heads up that project is expanding, and that we're likely going to see a change order at our next at the October board meeting for staff to request additional expenditure authority based on what you find there.
Okay.
So
And Dan, if I could just chime in on that, and Jay, under these facts, Jay, did you say you discovered this yesterday or this morning?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day yesterday.
Yeah.
We discussed this morning between managers what.
So at this meeting, the board has the option, based on the facts as explained by Jay, to add this item to your agenda, because this is new facts, new information that came to the attention of staff after the posting of the agenda. Staff would like the authorization to get authorization to spend more money on this contract that exceeds existing change order authority, and if the board wished, you could add this item to the agenda. It's sort of a two-step process. One is motion to add consideration of change order authority for 2022 control room upgrades, and then you add that to the agenda. And then step two is you discussion and you give staff additional spending authorization.
So I'll ask the board, so we could either add it as an emergency item right now, but I think it's by 4/5 vote of the board.
Yes, thanks for that, Ed.
Or if there's an adequate level of trust between the board and staff where you guys are comfortable just taking care of it and bringing it back to us next month.
But I understand that they don't want to delay because the contractors here do the work.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. So we should.
Either scenario, they do the work. It's just whether I think if we wanted to add it as an emergency item, we could, and then authorize like another $50,000 in change order authority or something like that, which should at least get into next month. What's that?
You would hope so.
I would hope. What's the pleasure of the board? Do you want to add this as an urgency item or emergency item to our agenda?
I think so.
I'd like to see this work get done before the snow flies.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
So, would this require a motion to add it as an emergency?
Yes, I recommend the board move to add, consider change order approval for 2022 control room update to the agenda for the explanation given by Mr. Parker about the recent discovery of the
So moved.
Right.
Okay, so Dale made a motion to add as an emergency item. Blake seconded it. No public comment. All board members in favor of adding it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed, so vote unanimous. So now,
Do we continue with this?
so let's now dispense with this. So how much change order authority are you requesting, Jay?
Well, if you were willing to go to 50,000, I mean, that's the total project cost, right, for the total cumulative
Change order amount of 50,000?
Right, which would cover this and then potentially
whatever else.
something else that might restore what we're losing contingency right now.
Or at least get you through this month, and then you could bring it back to the October meeting and recognize if you need 54,000, we're probably not going to string you up by the fingernails for getting the work done between now and then.
Yeah.
So just approximate amount.
No, it'd be the amount. So
I need a motion.
So would anyone like to make a motion to increase, or to set the total cumulative change order authority for the control room upgrade project at $50,000?
Is that what we're doing? Or so it was 170 and we gave you 10%, 17, so we're just increasing it by 33?
Yeah, so.
And that's good?
I mean,
you guys.
There is, remodel work can be ugly, so I mean, if you have appetite to go more, we can go more. 75K.
I have a high level of trust in your oversight that you're only going to do what's necessary to do, and so I just don't want to hold you guys up and incur a higher cost. I thought we were adding an additional $50,000 in change order.
That's a lot of money for a window repair.
Jay's going to.
You've done remodel.
It depends on the extent of the dry rot.
Hey, have you tried to hire a plumber lately?
Yeah. It's French.
I think I retired a little too early.
So I don't know that the motion. Do we have a motion? But
we're talking about
to increase an additional $50,000 to the project.
Okay. So Blake made a motion to add $50,000 of change order authority to the project, which would be a total of $67,000 total. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This is a cap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And anything beyond this would need to come back to the board. Any further discussion? If seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Model of efficiency. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else you need money for, Jay?
Oh, he wasn't done with his slideshow.
You have more on the list. Can I go?
Yeah.
So digital scanning project, we're nearly complete. Contractor's been busy at work scanning the TRI. So far, so good. No surprises found yet. Hopefully it stays that way. Next slide, please. And then 2 projects in study phase, digestion improvements study, which is then being done by a consultant, and the filter and flow condition assessment being done in-house. Both of those are currently underway. Any questions?
Yes.
Concerns?
Right?
Go ahead.
Driving over here, this side of Squash, a big pipe out there on the street. Are we doing anything there?
We're not.
Not TTSA.
No.
I don't think it's us either.
Is it concrete or black? Or
It's
plastic?
It's iron.
Iron?
Yeah, it's about a 40-footer. It looks like 220s.
Sounds like a
It's
sleeve.
been welded together. It might be some kind of a sleeve or a conduit or something.
Wasn't us. Okay.
I was going to ask if you knew what it was, Dave.
It's over by Olympic Valley.
Yeah, this side of it on the.
It's right there where we did where Squad did the
siphon.
Yeah, the siphon. Remember the siphon, Jay? Yeah. The TTSA that TTSA should have done for Squad, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah. Yeah, you made a case. But
I did have some photos.
It only costs us
Uh,
a few million.
Yeah.
Yeah, roof repair, this was
Okay.
the last month, restoring the roof at Building 3, and the next slide, please. And that's secondary 1, that's that secondary number 2, but sorry, that should be number 1. But that's the finish coat on the secondary.
Jay, the TRI, that's Pro Pipe that's doing that, and what section are we doing now?
Schedules 1 and 2, so that's the most upstream third. The Tahoe City Bike Path, and then down to about Bridge 6.
Okay, so that goes past the River Ranch and
Correct.
and did you see any of the pictures of where we did the old repair there at the River Ranch?
Not yet, but the instructions were call us with anything unusual, and we've gotten no calls. So, yeah, they did through that section.
Okay. No
Okay.
further questions.
Okay. Any further questions for Jay? Seeing none, Crystal.
I just gotta stop giving away all my money. Good afternoon, I guess now, and welcome to the Finance Committee, Director Wilson. I almost said Wilcox. So above our normal daily activities, we completed our interim audit in August. It was definitely a lot easier this year than last year. Last year was the first year auditor. We are continuing our processes for year-end closing to prepare for our final audit, which will take place in November. Payroll department and Michelle did some support for reviewing the handbook on some of the pay codes and that sort of thing that were potentially needed. The project going on in the purchasing department is converting part of our 600 plus rolls of microfiche to PDF that we are needing for some inventory and fixed asset reviews we're doing. And then let's continue work with the member districts and to activate new accounts and created year-end audit reports for us already. Next slide. There were not any inspections in August. We had 27 residential connections, 5 residentials with additional square footage, 1 accessory dwelling unit, and 2 commercials. New residential sewer service charge additions is TSD with 26, Tahoe City with 2.
Wrong one.
And then on the general administrative side, continued conversations with financial advisors and investors, also introducing them to Richard, bringing him on board with the meetings that we've been having. And we've also had several internal management meetings and external meetings with Sean Korn's team on the sewer service charge study. And then all of us participated in the tour from North Tahoe Public Utility District, and was the most in-depth tour I've ever had. It was very informational for myself. Next slide. And then I wanted to bring to your guys' attention that we have our very own superstar, movie star. Rochelle is featured in the brochure flyer for the 2022 Board Secretary Clerk Conference.
I'll be taking autographs after.
That's it first. And just to let you know, Scott, our Finance Committee meeting is the second Wednesday of every month, so October 12th. Next week in October, this coming October, it's normally 3 o'clock, but we decided to do 2 o'clock because we might need a little bit longer time. And it is, as of right now, that I know it's still Zoom.
Okay. Okay.
Any questions?
Nope. Any public comment on department reports? Nope. Seeing none. General Manager's report.
So since most items were touched on in the management reports, I'll just highlight a few. Continue to do one-on-one meetings with agency staff as I committed to them when taking on the interim position. As mentioned for the handbook, we did conduct an all-staff meeting, which was a combination of discuss the healthcare benefit discussion as well as the handbook. As Crystal mentioned, we conducted a tour for Director Wilson. The agency did a Reno ACES event, and they seem to be a much appreciated event, so we'll look at doing those again next year for the next season. Continue to review the state IT master plan. We're in the phase of reviewing the scope and cost proposals from the consultant. As I mentioned, one thing I've been working with Vicki on is just a handful of policies that should be developed for the agency. One being technical use policy. We used to have that kind of tucked into the handbook. Seems more efficient and appropriate to have these policies as a standalone, so we'll be drafting those as well. And then finalizing the updates to the employee handbook where some of the duties carried out. I did attend the agency general managers meeting, which has been very informative for me, and I just want to thank all the general managers at the other districts who've been very welcoming and offering support and help in anything that I need, which has been a nice to know that's in my back pocket. And that we continue to try to clean up around the plant and auction off old stuff and organize.
Right. Any questions for Richard? Any public comment on the general manager's report? Seeing none. Let's move on to board of director comments. Any questions or comments from any of the board members? Dave?
No, I'm good.
Nothing? Dale?
Yeah, I got a question. Richard, you sent us a little awareness blurb about information for the land exchange with the airport. And, this has been an ongoing situation for probably a decade. I don't know, Council, you might be able to fill us in a little bit more. I mean, where are we at with this? So we never did ink the final draft on what was presented. Is this thing just going to lay out
We have
there?
an inked final contract, a real estate purchase contract, and you haven't closed escrow on the transaction. I don't have any current updates in terms of what's transpired at the airport district end of things in recent weeks or months, so I'll defer to Richard on that.
Yeah, when I took on the interim, President Wilkins asked me to reach out to the interim GM at the airport, and I did do that. His feedback was they had gotten it back from the FAA requesting some minor verbiage changes. They completed those. It is now back at the FAA's desk for approval. Comment was they don't move super fast, so that's where it sits, is with the FAA to approve.
So
the
for
final.
clarity, we have an agreement that's inked with the airport. We've inked it. Now it's in the hands of FAA.
Yeah. Because one of the conditions of close of escrow was consent by FAA to the transaction, and we're awaiting. The airport district has to deliver that condition, and they're making their effort to get that condition satisfied.
Does with the change in makeup possibly at the airport district due to the elections and the statement in the Moonshine Inc. article that Richard sent us expressing at least one airport board member's opinion that they're not interested in that anymore, is there a opt-out option at this point, or you're saying they've I can't remember. They've basically signed the agreement.
They have and signed the
pending
agreement.
The FAA agreement. This is going to go through.
There's not an opt-out portion, and so they couldn't rescind the contract. We have a binding contract. However, as you guys may know from your own experience with real property purchase contracts, sometimes you can kill a transaction just by dragging your feet, not getting your escrow conditions satisfied. So there's some wiggle room in there if the airport district wanted to squash.
There's no penalty provision in the contract, so that if the airport district didn't follow through with it, it's not like there's a penalty to them.
Yeah, it's not like there was some earnest money deposit.
There's no penalty provision.
Yeah, you would have to be in the position of enforcing breach of contract action, and
So
we're not there yet, but that's that.
In answer to my question, we're done with this.
We're done for now.
Or is
Waiting
this
it.
going to be reopened because one of the airport board members
No,
said
I don't. I
that they're
wouldn't go
not
there.
satisfied with it? Or?
So on that, the airport board, this member did request this item be reconsidered by the airport board. That happened about 8 or 9 months ago. The airport board voted at that time to continue to move forward with the contract. So back to Blake's question, if there's new board members on there after this upcoming election and the majority switches and they decide not to uphold the contract, that is a possibility.
That this all falls through?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Other questions on the general manager report?
Just welcoming Scott. Good to have you on the board.
I'm sorry. This is board comment.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And appreciation to Richard for setting up a meeting with his staff and TSD's staff, creating a user group on a common piece of software. I think that's great collaboration there, so appreciate that.
Great. Scott?
I would just like to thank the staff for the work they did giving me the tour. It was drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. I've got one question. I don't need it answered now. I'm trying to remember when the election of officers for the board happens. So that's just something we should check out.
We've got one more year.
It's next September.
Okay.
Yeah, you got one more year.
Okay.
I thought it was.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought it was sooner than that. But
It's every 2 years we vote.
it's only a year. Oh, it feels like longer. Okay. If there's no further board comments, we will adjourn this meeting and we will go to the special meeting that was agendized with 2 items on it. It's a closed session. And first item is general manager employee evaluation, and then the second item would be general manager recruitment
We have
process.
comment.